humanity as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic. Thou members of Parliament and Ministers of State to discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through levels of government, this land and people may be well and truly served, and thy good purposes for the common human life be realized in our midst. O God, grant us the vision of our country, fair as it might be, country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service, and honor shall be given to the deserving, country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the efforts of those who struggle to make this vision a living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people that they may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Our members shall consider the votes and proceedings of Thursday, the 29th of July, 2021. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16. Yes, Honorable Member for Kwaras.
Please have been standing at page 13, item 4, closing. The meeting was adjourned at 4:30 p.m. Thank you.
What is your correction?
I said, item 4, page 13, the meeting was adjourned at 4:30 p.m. No, at is missing. The preposition at is missing. It is stated the meeting was adjourned 4:40 p.m.
Very well, the at is missing.
Thank you.
The point is well noted. Page 17. Other members, subject to the correction. The votes and proceedings of Thursday, the 29th of July, 2021, is hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. Yes, presentation of business statement, yes.
Speaker, with your leave, the majority leader has indicated that he's on his way almost here, and I'll seek your leave for us to vary the other business and rather take statement in anticipation of the majority leader.
Very well. The Speaker has admitted two statements. Both are to commemorate the World Day Against Trafficking in Human Persons. Yes. So I will invite the Honourable Member for Asikuma Odobimbrakwa to read the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make this statement on a very important day celebrated worldwide, led by the United Nations member states. Mr. Speaker, World Day Against Trafficking in Persons is an event observed across the globe annually on July 30th. This event by the United Nations is geared towards raising awareness and increase the prevention of human trafficking. The theme for this year's celebration is dubbed Victims' Voice Lead the Way. Mr. Speaker, this annual event, with its significance, was established and proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in its resolution A/RES/68/192 to provide opportunities for governments to reaffirm their commitments to stop criminals from exploiting people for profit. Right Honorable Speaker, trafficking in persons and modern-day slavery is a worldwide problem with just some few countries immune to human trafficking. The problem needs a global solution. That is why the United Nations organizes the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons to raise awareness, encourage vigilance, and gain support for prevention of human trafficking. In furtherance to ensuring that this problem is discouraged amongst traffickers, the UN has produced a protocol to punish human trafficking and are hoping to implement this globally, as well as an act to protect victims of trafficking. Mr. Speaker, survivors of human trafficking are being used in this year's campaign so as to help establish effective measures to prevent this crime, identify, rescue victims, and support them on their road to rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, trafficking in persons is a serious crime and a grave violation of human rights. Every year, thousands of men, women, and children fall victim into the hands of traffickers in their own countries and abroad. The problem of human trafficking has caused many victims to have traumatic post-rescue experience during identification interviews and legal proceedings. In fact, some victims have faced re-victimization and punishment for the crime they were forced to commit by their traffickers, as well as stigmatization or inadequate support received by others. Mr. Speaker, traffickers make huge profits from the industry, almost equivalent to drugs and armed business. Many individuals, especially men, women, and children, are mostly victims of these traffickers who are often being tricked and misled to believe that there are better job opportunities elsewhere for them, but end up being kidnapped and sold into slavery and other immoral practices, such as prostitution. Mr. Speaker, the General Assembly, through the 2010 United Nations Global Plan to combat trafficking in persons, mandated the 2025 United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime to come out with a report on trafficking in persons. The report covers 148 countries with an overview of patterns and flows of trafficking in persons cases between 2016 and 2019. It retraced that poor socio-economic conditions are used by traffickers to recruit and exploit victims. Extreme poverty, social norms, and familial background play. Emerging patterns on internet technologies are the current trends used by traffickers to facilitate recruitment and exploitation. Many of these victims who are caught up in trafficking often lost their rights and identity and are normally used and abused. Mr. Speaker, let me further state that trafficked people are forced to work in hard labor or engage in prostitution usually for no reward. Their travel documents and identity are collected from them and are warned of terrible punishments if they escape. To even worsen their plight, these traffickers take their victims to unfamiliar countries where they do not understand the language and have no way of getting help. In fact, some even die and are never heard of by their families and communities. Mr. Speaker, almost every country in the world is affected by trafficking, whether as a country of origin, transit, or destination for victims. As a result of this, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, a guardian of the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, and the protocol thereto, assist states in their efforts to implement the protocol to prevent, suppress, punish trafficking in persons. That is Trafficking in Persons Protocol. Mr. Speaker, these protocols are aimed to remedy the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation may include prostitution, sexual abuse, forced labor or services, slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. Mr. Speaker, Ghana indeed has not been left off this global problem. In a Ghana web and starfm.com.ghana publication of Sunday, 10 January 2021, it was reported that the police in Koforidua, the Eastern Regional Capital, had arrested some 3 foreign nationals suspected to be human traffickers at Troma, a suburb in New Jabe municipality. In that report, about 20 victims, including young women, were recruited through the internet under the disguise of securing them a well-paid job in Ghana. Their mobile phones, traveling documents were seized by these traffickers, as well as detaining and extorting monies from them upon arrival. Mr. Speaker, according to the 2021 Trafficking in Persons report on Ghana by the United States Department of State, Ghana still remains at Tier 2, considering the fact that Ghana does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so. Mr. Speaker, some of these efforts undertaken by government includes convicting more labor traffickers, opening a dedicated shelter for child trafficking victims, and increasing funding for victim services. The government also trained law enforcement personnel, judicial officials, community leaders, and service providers to be hard on these criminals whilst holding public awareness activities. Mr. Speaker, however, in order to fully attain and globally be recognized as dealing with the menace of trafficking and traffickers, government must prosecute and convict any alleged traffickers, as well as provide adequate resources for law enforcement to aid investigations and prosecutions, expand shelter capacity, address corruption in trafficking crimes, and finally amend the Anti-Trafficking Act, Human Trafficking Act 2005 regulations to remove the option of a fine in lieu of imprisonment in cases where the trafficker was a parent or guardian of the child victim. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, let us all encourage and support the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, the Human Trafficking Management Board, the Interministerial Committee mandated to administer the Human Trafficking Fund to modestly increase anti-trafficking efforts and facilitate the protection and reintegration of trafficking victims. In doing so, it will help Ghana not only to meet the minimum standards set to curb the menace, but also help prevent future occurrence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Now I call the chairperson of the Committee on Gender to read a statement on the same matter.
On the same
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make this statement. Today, July 30, is World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. This day, popularly referred to as the Blue Day, is being commemorated around the world. As a parliament, it is important for us to identify and commemorate this day whilst assessing progress made in the fight against human trafficking and what we can collectively do to enhance national efforts at eradicating it in our beautiful country. Mr. Speaker, our country is blessed with a deep, rich culture. We can look through history and see a graceful strength that inspires all who visit. Our people are talented and innovative and are constantly working for a better tomorrow. We have a lot to be proud of and thankful for. We have a thriving democracy and socio-economic credentials which has made us the spectacle of many across the world. But there is a shadow that has casted itself over our cherished country. That is the shadow of human trafficking. This shadow is not solely over our country, but it has casted its shadow over majority of the world. In summary, the Human Trafficking Act 2005 at 694 defines trafficking as a transfer of persons within countries or across national borders for monetary gain or by deception or through the abuse of power. Mr. Speaker, we must admit that this issue plagues our nation across and within our borders. Ghanaians are trafficking Ghanaians. We see at our airports a weekly quota of young people being trafficked under the guise of pursuing greener pastures in countries like Lebanon and the Gulf states. Cross-border trafficking is a very real crisis of immediate attention. Mr. Speaker, in ending these atrocities, we would have to work together in order to see change. Organizations like the International Justice Mission exemplify this well by supporting governments to end this problem. Institutions such as the Human Trafficking Secretariat, the Department of Social Welfare, Attorney General's Department, Ghana Immigration Service, and other stakeholders are working assiduously with their limited resources to end this injustice that is robbing the future and dignity of our children, brothers and sisters. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, hundreds of children are being exploited on the beautiful Volta Lake. In order to completely end this menace, we need to intensify collaboration to enhance awareness creation, rescue victims, arrest and prosecute perpetrators, rehabilitate survivors, and make it unappealing to traffic people. This is why the current partnership between the International Justice Mission, members of the Coalition of NGOs Against Child Trafficking, are worth acknowledging. Collaboration is not only necessary, but required to end trafficking, especially in the midst of COVID-19. At this point, it is important to commend the work of the Anti-Trafficking Unit of the Ghana Police Service Ghana Immigration Service, Economic and Organized Crime Office, and Human Trafficking Secretariat for their efforts and collaboration with NGOs in addressing the problem. Over the past couple of years, hundreds of victims of trafficking have been rescued within and across our borders, with several perpetrators being prosecuted. That notwithstanding, there are some areas in need of immediate attention. Despite a robust policy framework, Human Trafficking Act of 2005, Act 694, and amended by the Human Trafficking Amendment Act 2009, LI 2219, Human Trafficking Prohibition Regulations 2015. The practicalities on the ground show a steep practical deficit when it comes to the prevention and protection of victims of trafficking. Some key focal areas that we need to prioritize as a country to scale up our efforts at ending this problem are as follows. 1. The Department of Social Welfare is heavily understaffed and underfunded to provide the kind of support needed for victims of human trafficking. Some Department of Social Welfare offices lack basic provisions such as computers, vehicles, printers, etc. 2. There currently exists only one female adult shelter in the entire country, thereby creating a massive vacuum when it comes to survivors of trafficking. 3. There is only one short-term government-owned child shelter in the entire country with a limited capacity that is not suitable for the growing number of cases. The Human Trafficking Fund is woefully inadequate for the provision of rehabilitative, livelihood, economic empowerment support, and preventive activities. Ghana is often seen as a leader in West Africa and needs to step up the funding available to step up the fight against trafficking in persons. Ghana, with a population of approximately 30 million, currently has 1 million cedis budget in tackling the menace. In comparison, our neighbors like La Côte d'Ivoire, with a population of 24 million, and Togo, with a population of 7 million, spend $3,870,000 and $300,000 respectively on the fight against human trafficking. The Volta Lake would need a minimum of 10 service marine boats to patrol the lake and put an end to the exploitation of children on the lake. 6. There is a need for greater coordination between the Ghana Police Service, Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Ghana Immigration Service, Ministry of Justice and Attorney General's Department, and Economic and Organized Crime Office. 7. There is a need for physiosocial support for rescued persons and continuous support to monitor and to repatriate victims in the case of cross-border trafficking. 8. There is a need for the media to support the fight against human trafficking by sensitizing the general public on it, making available media platforms for victims to share their stories would go a long way to change the perception that human trafficking is abstract and would deter others from experiencing same. Mr. Speaker, it is worth mentioning that, as I speak, we have some members of the International Justice Mission as well as survivors of cross-border trafficking from the Gulf states and a survivor of the child trafficking on Lake Volta in the public gallery. I believe strongly that if we take measures to address some of these gaps, we will make double our impact in the fight against human trafficking. Mr. Speaker, as members of Parliament, we also have a critical role to play in supporting sensitization and law enforcement efforts by the respective government agencies and civil society organizations. May we see freedom for our people, and may Ghana be blessed. I thank you for the opportunity once again.
Well, we agreed that that should be the matter looking at today. Yes, leader, what next?
Speaker, rightly so, as agreed, there will be no commentaries on those statements. Speaker, if you may, if we can take item 7C, I to IB, item 7C on page 2 and page 3 of today's order paper.
Very well. At the commencement of public business, presentation of papers. Item C. By the chairman of the committee, Public Accounts Committee. CI.
Report of the Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, public boards, corporations, and other statutory institutions for the year ended 31st December 2017.
The report is duly presented for distribution to members. CII.
Report of the Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, ministries, departments, and other agencies, MDAs, for the financial year ended 31st December 2017.
The report is duly presented for distribution to members. CIII.
Report of the Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General on the statement of foreign exchange receipts and payment of the Bank of Ghana for the year ended 31st December 2017.
The report is duly presented for distribution to members. Item CIV.
Report of the Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, Consolidated Fund, for the year ended 31st December 2017.
The report is duly presented for distribution to members. Yes, what next?
Speaker, I guess we can now take the business statement.
Very well. We return to item number 5, business statement for the 11th week.
Mr. Speaker, your leave is being sought.
Sorry, I didn't get.
Mr. Speaker, I'm saying your leave is being sought for the presentation to be made by me.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, your committee met yesterday and arranged the business for the ensuing week ending Friday, the 6th of August, 2021. The Speaker, the order of business has been arranged per the report, and for emphasis, Mr. Speaker, 49 questions in all have been programmed, 11 of these urgent, and 38 oral. Mr. Speaker, as recommended during the presentation of the business statement last Friday, the Business Committee once again proposed as much as possible questions which are constituency specific be limited to only honorable members in whose names the questions stand to ask the main question and supplementary questions. This is to enable the House dispose of as many questions as possible, having regard to the tall order of questions scheduled for the week. Mr. Speaker may exercise his mandate pursuant to Order 72 and 72 to allow for statements to be made by ministers on government policy and from honorable members respectively. The Speaker,
Bills may be presented to the House for first reading in accordance with Order 120. However, those of urgent nature may be taken through the various stages in accord with Order 119. The Speaker, motions may be debated and their consequential resolutions, if any, be taken. And the Speaker will propose that the debate to approve the mid-year fiscal policy review of the budget statement and economic policy of Government of Ghana for the 2021 financial year be concluded by the 2nd of August 2021. Accordingly, the Business Committee is encouraging members to hold themselves in readiness for this and make a meaningful impact during the debate. Right Honorable Speaker, we've programmed to sit on 2nd of August 2021, which is Monday, and our view is that this arrangement will provide enough room for business of the House to continue, taking cognizance of the fact that the House will not sit on Wednesday, 4th of August, which is a public holiday. Mr. Speaker, Business Committee appeals that your earlier directive for sitting to commence at 2 p.m. be varied. We therefore recommend that sittings for the ensuing week commence at 10 a.m. on each day. Mr. Speaker may also extend sitting beyond 2 p.m. as stipulated in Order 42 to enable completion of scheduled business for each day of the week under consideration. Mr. Speaker, on the 3rd of August 2021, we expect to receive in the chamber the President of Angola and is expected to address us at 2 p.m. Honorable members are urged to be punctual to grant audience to the august guests. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, 4th of August 2021 is Founders' Day, a statutory public holiday, and it shall be observed as such. The House is expected to adjourn synodai on Friday, 6th of August 2021. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if it's appropriate to say synodai. Mr. Speaker, we accordingly, in accord with Order 162 and subject to Standing Order 53, submit the order of business for the ensuing week. Mr. Speaker, the attached to this report is the order of business from Monday to Friday. Mr. Speaker, I humbly so submit.
Honourable members, comments. Yes, Honourable Lee Telabi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since the beginning of this session, I have tabled 4 questions. One of them, three of them are constituency specific, but one of them had to do with the Kubo area. And fortunately, last week, 2 of them were programmed, but I didn't see it. I didn't see it in the other paper. The whole of the week. We have a new program, and it is not there. I would want to find out what has happened. It has to do with energy. And, Mr. Speaker, another issue of concern to me is the fact that the House has decided that constituency-specific questions should be, questions should not be allowed from other members. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that if we decide to do it wholesale, it will help in reducing the number of questions. For instance, yesterday, a colleague from Osudoku asked a question which borders, or has, something to do with my constituency. And therefore, if I were given the opportunity to also chip in just a question, it would settle the issue, and I will not be, forced to ask another question that will add up to the numbers. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would want to, ask the business committee to reconsider that decision, and, if not wholesale, related, constituencies that are, have common problems can, ask, same questions at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I was lucky to have my first question, after many questions have been filed, appearing on the order paper yesterday for the Minister for National Security. Unfortunately, it was shifted to today. Today, I've seen the order paper, the question is not there. And sadly enough, it doesn't even find expression in the order, in the business statement for next week. And I'm just seeking clarity if that the question is deleted forever, or when is it coming? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honourable member. No, behind you. Behind you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mine has to do with paragraph 4 on the address. That says that on the days that Mr. Speaker deems it necessary, we might sit before beyond 2 p.m. Mr. Speaker, we've had experiences where we've sat beyond 2 p.m., running all the way beyond 5 p.m. And the challenge that we faced has had to do with the using of washrooms. Apparently, when it's 5 p.m., the taps don't run. There is no water running around the precincts of the chamber. And it's a little bit very inconveniencing for members when we sit for long periods. And then I did some checks. I don't know how far the facts that I got represent the true picture, but I was told that there's somebody who is supposed to be in charge of pumping water and making sure that the water goes around everywhere, who closes work at 5. So once he's closed for the day, there is no water in Parliament. So we might have to take that into account when sitting goes beyond 5 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I wish to draw the attention of the Deputy Majority Leader to page 2 of the report, page number 2, which is for Monday, paragraph V, presentation and first reading of bills. The proper rendition of E, which is a bill that I and 7 others are sponsoring, will read proper human sexual rights. The rights is omitted in there. Just to draw your attention to that. And then secondly, to find out if the business committee will be minded to bring the Minister for Health to this house in the course of the week on the growing challenges that Ghanaians and foreigners are facing with the antigen test that is being done by Frontiers Healthcare Limited. The growing number of false positives appears to be becoming a certain cause of worry, because people are testing negative less than 72 hours before they arrive Ghana. They arrive Ghana, and those are PCR tests. They arrive Ghana, the antigen test at the airport finds them positive. They are forced to go into a hotel.
This is not a statement time. You have raised that issue.
Okay, so I just wanted to explain the issue. And then the third one, so just to make sure that it's not becoming a business enterprise, the third one would be to find out if the Minister for Interior can be brought here. 2 weeks ago, I raised the issue of us as members of parliament getting police bodyguards, not police ushers. Because a police bodyguard assigned to you without a firearm is an usher and not a bodyguard. We saw what happened to our brother, Honorable Suparu. But for the fact that his police guard was armed, would have had an unfortunate tale to tell. Not all police guards assigned to members of parliament have been issued firearms. When are they moving or transitioning from ushers to bodyguards? Thank you very much.
Okay, let me start from here. Yes, Bob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 14th of July, I filed an urgent question. On the 14th of July, I filed an urgent question on an aspect that has to do with foreign trained doctors who had written their entrance exam, and as we speak today, they have not received their results. I have not seen it in the business statement, and it has gone beyond 10 sitting days as prescribed by our standing orders. I just want to know why we have not seen that, because this is a very serious issue that has to do with our healthcare and our health system, and I thought that it was important that we capture that. So a leader may want to look at that. Two, just to add to what Honorable Telabi said, yes, I can understand the rationale behind limiting questions that are constituency specific to just the person who asks the question. But the question is that there are certain situations where the problems cut across. For example, last week there was an issue of in terms of the closure of borders, where somebody asked a question. I come from a border town. The problems are akin to that of Jomoro. So if you limit it to constituency, it means that all of us will have to file individual questions to have the same response that can be dealt with within a few minutes if we have follow-up questions. So I thought that the business committee led by the leader would take a second look at this particular suggestion and see how they can make an amendment to that effect. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, we will respond to these ones and then we'll take further ones. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, it has been said here, time without number, that when questions are filed, admissibility of same is the responsibility of Mr. Speaker. So for members to come up with issue of business committee failed to program, first of all, you must find out whether or not your question has been admitted. Two, the issue that Mr. Sam George raised, the issue of security, I think those are welfare matters. It has nothing to do with business committee planning it on the House floor. So it will be discussed. It's safe that you wanted to make it known. So we've taken note. Let's discuss it. And Health Minister, file a question. It can be an urgent question. You are coming up with a proposal on how to preserve our Ghanaian values and all other matters. So you have what it takes to use the parliamentary tools available to do the needful. I believe that on the question of supplementary questions and it being of shared effect. Honorable colleagues, we are trying to deal with the backlog. So, for instance, we work together here. Unless you cannot reach out to your colleague to say that, okay, I have this matter, you've asked the question, so please add it to your supplementary question, so that your colleague will deal with it for you, since you share a common boundary and you think that it relates to you. That's the way we have to work. Else, there will be a lot of questions that would be not ready for and to be tabled. So we come back again in October thereabout. I don't think that's what we want. So, honorable members, let's agree to that proposal and make progress. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy Majority Leader, in the statement, stated that on Tuesday, 3rd of August 2021, the President of Angola will be addressing this House. Mr. Speaker, that's not unusual for visiting presidents to visit the country, but to address the House, I would be very interested to know if the leader can highlight the purpose of the visit and the political dividends of this trip that we stand to gain, and why he's addressing this House. And Mr. Speaker, while I have the floor, I think the point that the Honorable Sam George made is very, very important, especially because in the last 3 days or so, there has been a lot of these issues on social and an appearance that somehow we are not handling the issue of tourism very well. And I'm very concerned
avenue for dealing with social media matters. I really have a problem with encouraging social media
it's not a social media matter
on the floor. And so bring them through the appropriate agency.
That's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. I believe
business
that
committee will program it. He has said
yes,
so.
I'm suggesting that the business committee.
Otherwise, yes, Kwame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the business statement presented by my good friend, the Deputy Leader. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank you. When I notice you're always available for sitting to start on time, as we all promise ourselves. But it appears it's our colleagues, ourselves, in many cases, who are not being on time for you to enter the chamber. I'm appealing again to colleagues. It appears speakership, in many cases, has been getting themselves ready to start work on time. It is ourselves who don't populate the House appropriately for them to enter the House. So, colleagues, let's come to work once again on time. Speaker told us leadership by example. Mr. Speaker, I used to say, imagine you have an appointment with your doctor for surgery, and the doctor is late.
This is business statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm worried that the leader just left the House. During the last business statement, reading of the business statement, he promised that you make the appropriate arrangement for extended sitting. Mr. Speaker, this promise has failed. No such arrangement was made and delivered, so he failed. So this time around, make sure if we are having extended sitting, provide the necessary support system for members of parliament to work. Mr. Speaker, the last week, a very important question was answered in this House relating to the president's, the cost of the president's travel. And in the answer of the finance minister, he asked my colleague, Honorable Kujeto, to redirect the question to the minister responsible for national security. He did, and the question was admitted. I was thinking that being a question that is very urgent, that question should have been scheduled for the national security minister to tell us exactly how much that particular trip cost. So I'm urging the leader. Can you bring that question to so that the national security minister would respond to that question about the cost of the president's Mr. Speaker, the last one. Since Parliament MPs have been given research assistance, Mr. Speaker, They've been on the same salary from that time to today, Mr. Speaker. I'm encouraging leadership to work to improve the welfare of our RAs. They are complaining a lot.
They are not paying them.
In fact, I'm told they are not even paying them. Mr. Speaker, it's an affront to Parliament, and it's a breach of respect to members of Parliament. So let leadership work to augment the welfare of our RAs, because if our RAs are not in good shape, we ourselves may not be in good shape. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
I indeed intend to curtail it because we are not discussing the business statement. You only take the advantage to make comments on matters which are. Yes, the film.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Deputy Majority Leader answer to a question regarding an urgent question that was filed. But we know by practice, when Speaker does not admit your question, there will be a formal communication. Mr. Speaker, we woke up last week to news that insurance companies in this country are being called upon to raise new minimum capital. Mr. Speaker, I have filed an urgent question. The law is very clear as to the circumstances under which that should be done. It's not been done. And yet they are being called upon. So I found an urgent question.
You have a question that is outstanding.
Exactly, Mr. Speaker.
That's all. He has a question that's outstanding. Please do respond, and I'll curtail.
Mr. Speaker, the business committee is made up of 20 members. 10. We meet as a team to work on these things. Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker has not admitted any question from Honorable Ablakwa for the records. I don't want you to create the impression that Mr. Speaker has admitted his question, passed it on to the business committee, and we failed to program the minister to answer. Let it not be the record. Your leadership is part of the committee, and they will not sit idle when a question has been admitted. They protect your interest. Don't create the impression that your leaders won't talk for you. Don't create that impression. Don't create that impression. Mr. Speaker, again. Mr. Speaker, again. Mr. Speaker, they don't like the truth. Mr. Speaker, again. We've said that admissibility lies within the bosom of Mr. Speaker. So you should use your whips. Mr. Speaker, the minority members who are always concerned about their questions, you should use your whips. Your chief whip is very effective. Your deputy chief whips. What you are failing to do is that you don't want to utilize the leadership strength. Mr. Speaker, that's what they are doing.
Honorable Leader, kindly respond to the issues.
Very well. Mr. Speaker, I will respond by suggesting to them strongly that for some of these concerns, use your leaders. For some of these concerns, use your leaders. Go to your leaders. I'm appealing to you. Go to your leaders. Discuss with your leaders so that your leadership will use their influence to follow up. That's why we have leadership. So please, use your leaders, minority members. Mr. Speaker, having said so, Are you
saying that there's no questions outstanding to be programmed by the business committee?
Mr. Speaker, not at all. All that were brought to our attention, we've dealt with them. Mr. Speaker, we've dealt with them. That's why I'm saying that I'm appealing to them to consult and confer with their leadership. You confer. And Honorable Telabi, go to your leader, engage your leader.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the report be adopted. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, before I make comments on this business statement, of which I'm a member of, may I refer us to Order 161. And with your permission, I read. There shall be a business committee consisting of 20 members and comprised of the majority leader as chairman, the chief whips of the parliamentary parties, and other members. Mr. Speaker, this is a committee of the House, and the questions members are asking, the report of the business committee is like the report of any other committee, and we operate the committee system. The question that was directed by the acting leader of the business committee does not concern the leadership of any caucus. And the leadership of any caucus and the members of either caucus belong to this committee. So let us not go on that tangent. The Speaker, to assist him, the business committee program questions submitted to the Speaker and admitted by the Speaker for the plenary for our adoption, which we have done. But what I was expecting the acting majority leader to say is that, the Speaker, we have a lot of questions, some of which are brought to the business committee to be programmed for the ensuing week. Similarly, we have over 50 statements submitted to the speakership for admission. Mr. Speaker, we cannot take 50 statements on the plenary for a day. So members should also understand, until the leader or acting leader of the business statement explains to them, they wouldn't know. So when such questions are asked, and we jovially say that ask your leadership, respect your leadership, or you are not making use of your leadership, no member submit a question to leadership, and leadership of either side does not have the power to admit questions. And the business committee either does not have the power to admit questions. It lies within the jurisdiction of the Speaker. And the Speaker, beyond that, the comment that was made by the Honorable St. George, the Speaker, per the business statement, we are to adjourn on Friday, on next week 6. So technically, the business committee may not be able to sit again until when we come back. So if you say the business committee should go and program the health minister to appear before us, the Speaker, and the leader said, oh, he should come by a question. He has both a question and a statement under his bosom, but he's making use of a statement. So, Mr. Speaker, the question, the appeal was just being directed to you, that since we are going in next week, and we may be coming back somewhere in October, for 2-3 months, the House may not sit. And this is a health concern. So he was of the view that if the Speaker or the House can just invite the Minister for Health to make a statement, and provision has been made for the statement, for statements in the business statement. So let's make use of what we can make use of before August 6th. But if you say, oh, go and come by a question, knowing very well that a question cannot be admitted, no matter how urgent, and answered before August 6th. So, Mr. Speaker, we are having serious challenges. The business committee has not done anything untoward. The questions are so many, the statements are so many, and Mr. Speaker, we have to make use of the time that we have. So with these few comments, Mr. Speaker, I want members to accept that, and I also want to appeal to you, if technically you can invite, the House can invite the Minister for Health to come and brief the House on the measures being taken, so that we may not go and be recalled within these 2 months to come, just as we did when we were in the House that we were called because of COVID, come back and come and approve the Deputy Minister for Health. With these few comments, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable Leader, if members don't have their questions admitted, is it wrong for their leader to find out from the Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, no. There is a question book.
That is all I understood the Deputy Leader to be saying. And if there are issues with admissibility, to verify for you, I think that shouldn't be an issue. Yes, Leader.
Speaker, if I have your indulgence, just a couple of issues on the business statement. Speaker, my first will be that probably on Monday, as we have agreed to sit, we will engage the members who have questions in order that we can spend quality time to have some quality comment or debate on the media review. We will stand the questions on Monday to another day, and then we can deal and bring to conclusion matters relating to the media review of the budget. Now, Speaker, since nothing stands referred to any committee and there are no supplementary estimates, that would be my suggestion. Mr. Speaker, we further expect that the ad hoc committee report on the Sputnik V should be programmed for our consideration before we adjourn sine die. Then, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Sam George have raised a very significant issue. Mr. Speaker, we should give it some attention in the public interest about COVID tests and persons challenging the medical and scientific veracity of the tests of PCR and antigen tests. Mr. Speaker, imagine your wife had traveled or your mother was coming and is subjected to a test that is questionable or the outcome of it that is questionable. That will separate the families, not based on scientific merit. Some concerns have been raised about the quality of the test conducted by Frontier Health Services. We have our issues with this procurement, but we deserve better as a country, and this House deserves to ask relevant and legitimate questions, including positioning even Noguchi to play an independent supervisor role. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a matter if the Health Minister, together with the Ministry for Aviation, will respond to. That will be important. Mr. Speaker, my final, as I indulge you again, is matters relating to fertilizer, either a shortage of it or non-payment of persons supplying fertilizer, which is affecting farmers generally across the country. And Mr. Speaker, is seasonal. If we do not act now, we will act in regret. So if it is that the Ministry of Finance must come and explain why they are not paying persons who have supplied fertilizer, or we do not have fertilizer, our farmers deserve to know. And this House, as we are told by Deputy Leader, will rise sine die. So the Minister for Agriculture probably will have to come and also brief the House. And I'm urging the Majority Leader to schedule him. I don't want to believe that some allocations meant for some ministries are not being made available for other political reasons that I may not venture into. But, Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Agriculture will have to come and tell us status of matters relating to fertilizer. Because as for farmers, if the rains are over, they are over. Of what use will it be? And government policy on it, we all support it, whether subsidized or free. So, Mr. Speaker, that will be. Then finally, Mr. Speaker, your own committee on privileges, which is looking at the matter of Kennedy at Japan. I understand that there has been back and forth as to Zoom or virtual or in-person sitting. Our recommendation is that you chair the appointments committee. We sat in person. And I would think that fairly, if your committee, I'm not a member of it, but I think that it should be possible for the committee to sit in person to take evidence and advise us accordingly. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Leader, I think it would have been fair to speak to me or to speak to your ranking member before bringing this matter, the ranking member on the Privileges Committee, before bringing matter on the floor of the House. The thing is that I've never called for a hearing by Zoom. I know that one of us are giving an interview to the press and it's totally misrepresented the facts. It was a meeting to decide when we will sit. That's all, which I said we'd do it on Zoom. I discussed with my ranking member. I understand his challenges. People did not show up, but the meeting went on and it has been advertised. We will sit on 5th November. 5th August, in person. We have given the venue for the meeting, and we have advised members which sections of the standing order they must read in preparation for their work. That was all I intended us to do at that meeting. It was not intended to be a hearing. And I encourage members, very well, Leader will discuss this later. Yes, Honorable Majority Leader, now that you're here.
Mr. Speaker, I just sent it, and the business statement was presented to the House by the Deputy Majority Leader. But I am just hearing the Minority Leader make a request to me to invite the Minister responsible for Agriculture to come and respond to some issues relating to the supply and perhaps payment for fertilizers. The Speaker, I think if we added them on this, we could invite the Minister to come, not to respond to a question, because admitting a question perhaps would be too late in the day, but you could invite him to come and make a statement on the subject matter. And Mr. Speaker, I understand the Honorable Sam George also raised some issues about the integrity of the equipment for testing COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, we should appreciate this point that there's nowhere in the world where anybody could vouch 100% for the integrity of these equipments. There's nowhere in the world. So let's not rubbish what is happening here. I think I'll relate to a specific incident that happened just about 5 days ago. A University Don had led a team to Germany of all places. And when they got there, they submitted themselves to the COVID test. Just when they were coming, they submitted themselves to a test in the hospital facility. All of them were negative. They got to the airport just less than 6 hours after they submitted themselves to the hospital facility. Got to the airport and they had to submit themselves again. They showed their results. They said no, they should submit themselves again. And when they did, the University Don who was leading the team was found out to be tested positive within a space of 6 hours, and he couldn't believe it. They went home, submitted to a second test at another hospital. It came out negative. What it means is that there is something wrong. What it means is that there's something wrong somewhere. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not too sure that the attempt by some people to run down our facilities is a good effort. It's certainly not. It's certainly not. And let's not try to relate to matters that we don't know. Because I hear somebody saying that it's a fact. What fact do you know? Please, this is a matter about Ghana. Let's not do that. Let's not go on that path. So please, if the minister has to also come and relate to it, so be it. But let's not go on our own frolic to run the country down. It doesn't do anybody any good. The Speaker, having said so, sometimes I also get a bit bamboozled by the circumstances that emanate after a business statement is presented. The Minority Leader is a member of the business statement, of the business committee. and is often positioning himself to cause unnecessary internal bleeding. He has always been part. You don't raise those matters. You come, and they come as addendum to the considerations of business committee. But having said so, the commingling of matters that don't relate to the business committee, let's begin with respect. I believe we should make a clear distinction. Relate to matters contained in the business committee's report, and then we can move on as early as possible. Otherwise, as often happens, anytime a business committee's report is presented, then about an hour after that, we are debating issues not connected with matters contained in the business committee's report. I find that very incongruous. But we have done so today, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, the two issues from the minority leader, I guess we can relate to. And also from Sam George, the Honorable Sam George. I guess if it's necessary to invite the minister to come and speak to the matter, we can get him to do that before we adjourn on the 6th of August. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Very well. A business statement of the ensuing week is hereby adopted by the House.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, except to give an indication, I think the statement, a program that should come and relate to a question that had to be shifted to Tuesday. At the time, I have not had a response. Now I have a response, so I believe we can even relocate it to Monday for me to respond to that urgent question. The urgent question from the Honorable Angelina Oforiwa Alowu Te, the member for Afajatosa. We can respond to it on Monday. We will bring it forward to Monday. That's the only amendment to it.
Very well. We can move on to item number 8. Motion.
Speaker, I rise to move that this Honorable House adopts the 9th report of the Appointments Committee on His Excellency the President's nomination of Mr. Kisi Ejabin for appointment as Special Prosecutor. So in so doing, I present the committee's report and plead the Hansa Department to capture the entirety of the report, whilst I read just sections of it. So Mr. Kisi Ejabin was born on the 2nd July 1978 at Kwewu Tafo, but hails from Kwewu in Kwetia in the Eastern region. He had his basic education at the Holy Star Academy Lab from 1983 to 1987 and continued to Wager Barracks School, Teshi from 1987 to 1989 in Accra. Speaker, in 1998, Mr. Ejabin was admitted to study law at the University of Ghana, Legon, where he was awarded with Bachelor of Law, LLB, in May 2001. He subsequently proceeded to the Ghana School of Law for his professional law course in 2003 and was called to the bar in October 2003. The nominee in May 2005 was awarded a Master of Law, LLM, in Marine Environmental Law. Then he worked at the Information Service Department at the West Achim District. Speaker, to conclude, the committee has duly considered the nomination of His Excellency the President for the appointment of Special Prosecutor in line with Section 13(3) and 8 of the Special Prosecutor Act 2007, Act 959, and the standing orders of the Parliament and recommends the nominee, Mr. Kisi Ejabin, to the House for approval. Speaker, I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Leader.
Speaker, I beg to second the motion for the adoption of the 9th report of the Appointments Committee of the President's nomination of Mr. Kisi Ejabin for the appointment as Special Prosecutor. Mr. Speaker, nobody will stand in the way of any president to want to combat corruption, to prevent it, and to punish it. It was reassuring listening to Kisi Ejabin when he said he will make corruption a high-cost activity. I've always said a high-risk activity. To make it high-risk will be to sanction it. And sanction it will require strong political will. I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that this young man, as he said, he would walk in his own shoes. He cannot fit the shoes of the Honorable Martin Alami Shiamidu as Special Prosecutor, given his background and experience compared to that of Honorable Martin. But, Mr. Speaker, in contributing to the debate, I've had cause to go back to 26 October 2017 and to refer to a very important letter the United States of America referred to the Committee on Constitutional Legal when the matter of Special Prosecutor was debated. And Mr. Speaker, I say so because in this particular matter, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa, referred the nomination of Special Prosecutor by the Attorney General to Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, this is the observation of the United States of America, which is always at the global forefront of fighting corruption. And Mr. Speaker, I quote, "Our foremost recommendation is that the office of Special Prosecutor be seen to be free of political influence and interference. Specifically, the appointment of the Special Prosecutor should be subject to a transparent, competitive shortlist process." Mr. Speaker, I repeat it. The determination of a Special Prosecutor in the letter of the United States Embassy dated August 31st, 2017, is that the Special Prosecutor should be subject to a transparent, competitive, shortlisting process. This Special Prosecutor was not subjected to this requirement. I associate myself with this requirement, and I think that next time, the President must cause an advertisement to be made publicly, because this, why is it that we are not relying on Article 88? Because successively, Attorney Generals have failed us. They have failed the test under the Fourth Republic to punish corruption and to punish closer politically exposed persons. So you need a truly independent person. So that is where I will have my doubt. How independent will Kisi Ejabin be, given the determination that he was kind of handpicked or recommended by the Attorney General just to the President? So, Mr. Speaker, in future, we should subject it so that we get an apolitical person to occupy the person so that he can deal with will our quest to combat corruption. Mr. Speaker, my other comment, as for the young man, he impressed me with his knowledge of his law, particularly criminal law. But Mr. Speaker, laws are not enough to fight graft, to fight white-collar criminality and economic crime. Because one of the offenses, both the giver and the receiver benefit from the offense. It's not like other criminal offenses where you lose something. With bribery and corruption, it is shrouded in secrecy. But he comes with some background. Mr. Speaker, as you yourself question him on some of those matters, he assured us that he will work to criminalize unexplained wealth, subjecting persons to what the law of evidence require, prove beyond reasonable doubt. He will avoid conflict of interest situations. And Mr. Speaker, he will work to reduce the incidence of corruption. And another assurance, Mr. Speaker, he gave your committee was to avoid possible conflict between the special prosecutor and the attorney general. And probably the chemistry of the two of them may work. But work to serve Ghana and not to serve any political party or government in power. In any case, corruption, we are told, is in Ghana facilitated by three important factors: need, greed, and opportunity. And persons who have control of resources are likely to have the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, he said that he will work with the board to create 2 new additional departments. We look forward to measuring him on those matters. Mr. Speaker, as I have said, I have no objection whatsoever in standing in the way of a president who wants to fight corruption. But what we expect is Kisia Jebin to demonstrate political neutrality, political independence, and political will in making corruption a high-risk activity. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by advising him that in Ghana, the focus is normally on political office holders, ministers and MPs. Chief directors and chief executives are left as if they don't. Some of them do, Mr. Speaker, and there's evidence that some chief executive and other office holders. Corruption in Ghana is divided into, by some writers, 3 categories. You have petty corruption, you have grand corruption, and you have political corruption. The focus should not be on just petty corruption. When you see a policeman stop a truck driver, then we say that is normal. That is how it begins. When you go to the ministries, you want a certificate, you are asked to bring something to lubricate the administrative machinery to get it done earlier. That should not be. But Mr. Speaker, I think that the young person deserves our support to make corruption a high cost, as I have said. But what we expect of him, without repeating myself, is for him to demonstrate political will, strong, without fear or favor, to deal ruthlessly with any person, including politically exposed person, to be able to contain corruption. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Gaga.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to add my voice to the motion ably moved and seconded by the minority leader. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Kisi Ajabin clearly, in my estimation, demonstrated a lot of competence and ability to deliver as special prosecutor when he appeared before the appointments committee. Mr. Speaker, one of the cardinal guiding principles that informed the decision of this House in enacting the Office of Special Prosecutor Act was to have an office that would be insulated from all forms of manipulation and interference in the discharge of its mandate to prosecute corruption and corruption-related offenses. And so, what the committee sought to do was to test Kisi Ajabing's ability to rise to the occasion when appointed as the occupant of an office that truly would be independent in carrying out its mandate. And Mr. Speaker, I should say Mr. Ajabing acquitted himself well in that regard. I'll refer you to paragraph 5(6). In paragraph 5(6), when he was confronted with the accusation labeled against him as having had something to do with the Ejapa royalties transaction, he was very frank and stated that he came nowhere near the Ejapa royalties transaction. Mr. Speaker, indeed, if Mr. Ajabing had stated that he had something to do with the Ejapa royalties transaction, in my view, this would have disqualified him from occupying the office of special prosecutor. But he distanced himself clearly from this transaction and accusation that was leveled against him. He also, Mr. Speaker, put matters to rest in respect of his age and competence, because he had also been accused that as a young person he lacked the experience and expertise to step into the shoes of a colossus such as the former special prosecutor, Mr. Martina Midu. And then the nominee, Mr. Speaker, said to the committee that, listen, he was 43 years of age, and sought to draw a comparison between himself and the president of France, who is also 43 years. He also informed the committee, Mr. Speaker, that under the Constitution, he even qualifies to sit on the bench of the Supreme Court. And to qualify to sit on the bench of the Supreme Court, you need to be 15 years. And that he had done 17 years at the bar. And so, though a very young and enterprising lawyer, he has also clearly demonstrated that he's very, very much qualified to occupy the office of special prosecutor. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude on the last point that I thought he demonstrated a lot of candor. And this point, Mr. Speaker, had to do with the issue of potential conflict between the role of an Attorney General and the role of the Office of Special Prosecutor. He was very, very frank that under Article 88, the prosecutorial powers of the state are vested in an Attorney General. However, the Office of Special Prosecutors Act also vests the power in a special prosecutor to initiate criminal proceedings in our law courts. So clearly, though the law says Office of Special Prosecutor should be responsible for prosecuting cases of corruption and corruption-related offenses, in certain cases, the Attorney General could actually decide to prosecute cases of corruption and corruption-related matters. So if care is not taken, if the roles are not properly delineated, and these were his words, the proper delineation of the roles, there could be possible conflict between the two. And so it is my prayer that when he assumes the office, he might come up with certain proposals for the consideration of all to determine how to properly delineate the roles so as to forestall the potential for conflict between the two offices. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that Mr. Kisi Ajabing merits to be made special prosecutor, and we should all support him in that regard. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Honorable Leader.
Speaker, I also rise to make some brief remarks in respect of the 9th report of the Appointment Committee relating to the nomination of Mr. Kisi Ajabing for appointment as the special prosecutor. The Speaker, having listened to colleagues who have spoken ahead of me, I think the issues at stake relate to the knowledge, candor about the law of Mr. Kisi Ajabing, and the conclusion of all who've spoken ahead of me is that he's a man who is very deep in his knowledge about the law. Does he have integrity? Speaker, again, people have spoken eloquently about integrity of Mr. Kisi Ajabing. Spoken eloquently again about his own independence of thought and belief. his conviction and commitment. Mr. Speaker, his avowed position in upholding the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Honorable Agaga, related to the imperatives of Article 88. I think before we came to fashioning the law relating to the office of the special prosecutor, we all came to that understanding that the Constitution vests in the Attorney General the power of investigations. No other person. No other person. What we sought to do, and indeed did, was to have the Attorney General, Speaker, relinquish, or if you like, delegate some of his responsibilities to a special prosecutor. It does not exonerate the Attorney General, or recuse the Attorney General eternally from involvement in such criminal investigation. He could. But I agree that there should be some clear delineation of boundaries. Even those ones, if we even did that, it cannot be a permanent watershed, because occasions may demand the Attorney General himself or herself intervene to engage in the investigation and prosecution in relation to such cases. Mr. Speaker, the special prosecutor is supposed to work in close collaboration with the Auditor General in pursuing criminals, especially those of them who engage in money laundering, engage in corruption, and invest in assets. Mr. Speaker, I believe as a country the time has come for us to have a second look of the Constitution in respect of Article 286. Article 286 of the Constitution 2 provides that a person who holds a public office shall submit to the Auditor General a written declaration of all property or assets owned by him, whether directly or indirectly. The Speaker 2 says, failure to declare or knowingly making false declaration shall be a contravention of this Constitution and shall be dealt with in accordance with Article 287 of this Constitution. Now, if such declarations are made, the Auditor General places these declarations in a safe under lock. The Speaker, how is anybody to know that a person has failed to declare or knowingly made false declarations in respect of his assets if the Auditor General is not allowed to look at the declaration? The Auditor General, indeed Auditors General elsewhere, when you submit your declaration, they look at it and investigate your declaration. If you say that you have acquired within maybe a space of 4 years as a public officer 10 houses, they will look at your income. How did you get to possess or own 10 houses in 4 years? They will match it against your income, and then they'll be able to establish whether you acquired those assets properly or improperly. But our case is different. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to look at this. The clause 4 of 286 provides any property or assets acquired by a public officer after the initial declaration required by clause 1 of this article, which is not reasonably attributable to income, gift, loan, inheritance, or any other reasonable source, shall be deemed to have been acquired in contravention of this Constitution. How do we know? If, as obtains now, the Auditor General is not required to have a look at your own declaration. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe we should have a reconsideration of these provisions in order to allow the Auditor General to peruse these documents that are given to him. If there are any contradictions, if there are any suspicions, if there are any improprieties that are established by the Auditor General, they could be ferried to the Special Prosecutor for further investigation, Mr. Speaker, and if needs be, for prosecution. So, Mr. Speaker, I would join ranks with colleagues who have spoken highly of Mr. Kissi Ejabeng, seeking his approval by this House as a special prosecutor, but we need to look at our laws to expand the frontiers for investigation and pursuing criminals. Other than that, we'll make the people charged with the responsibility blameless. Speaker, will reduce them to toothless bulldogs who could only bite, who could only bark, but will not be able to bite. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity.
At the conclusion of the debate, the question is all in favor of the motion. Say aye. All against, say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Mr. Kissi Ejabeng has been confirmed as the nominee for the position of Special Prosecutor. Or the other name, Special Prosecutor. Yes. This one is Special Prosecutor. Yes, normally that may be guided by the House.
This week, I believe we can get to item 9, which unfortunately has been listed as a motion that this House approves the mid-year fiscal policy review of the budget statement and economic policy of Government of Ghana for the 2021 financial year. Mr. Speaker, I would want to submit, as I started by saying yesterday, that indeed this presentation technically is not to seek approval from this House. It was information that was coming to us by way of a statement. The House could pass comments on them, but it should not really come in the form of a motion. So subject to the indulgence of my colleagues, I want to amend the item as listed. That is item 9 captured as a motion. It cannot be a motion. The Speaker, is a statement that was given to us, and we must comment. We must comment on the statement, which is our responsibility. The Minister, I understand, moved a motion, but that was wrong technically. The Speaker, technically that was wrong. It's a statement that he submitted to this House. So we can just amend the item listed as a motion and then proceed to make comments on the presentation that the Minister made to this House. Speaker, I so submit.
Speaker, first of all, leader of government business, unless he didn't advise the Minister appropriately, he moved a motion. The Minister moved a motion yesterday, and he said that this Honorable House approves the mid-year review. And Mr. Speaker, I've just requested for some information. 2019, it was a motion, and if you want, I'll quote for you. I beg to move that this Honorable House approves the mid-year review. 2020, I beg to move. It was a motion. So, Mr. Speaker, and even 2018. Now, leader, whether it is a statement or not, our most important core function as Parliament is oversight and budget oversight. And this forum remains the forum for debate. Comment we can, but we should debate because, Mr. Speaker, the Minister raised debatable issues here. When he was comparing 2016 to 2021, how are we going to respond with comment? We have to debate it and then share our narrative. But I have no difficulty because, Mr. Speaker, when you read Article 179 well, for purposes of yesterday, he didn't come with a supplementary estimate. That's why he himself said that, and maybe let me quote 179, Mr. Speaker. It's just for us to look at it as mid-year review. 179. For my purpose, Mr. Speaker, Hansard will capture the rest. I'm interested in 8, where in respect of the financial year, it is found that the amount of money appropriated by the Appropriation Act for any purpose is insufficient. That is why you would have referred some matters to committees and other issues. So probably within that context, we will agree to make comments on the statement. But he moved the motion. You didn't advise him properly and early. So accept responsibility for that. Or is part of your Swami new tomorrow aspiration tactics. I don't understand. Motion and now statement. How can you reduce a motion to a thing? But because we have no difficulty. We've agreed, I understand that at conclave you agreed that you take 3 to commence whether debate or comment. Let's subject it to a critique. That is what is expected of us as a house. Thank you.
Very well. Honourable members, we are starting with the Honourable Kesel Ato Forson. Is that right? Yes, Leader. Sorry. Before
Mr. Speaker, I think that we require your directive on this matter. Because, you see, if there is a thin line between the content of a comment and indeed a debate. But when you relate to a debate, after we have to vote. We have to vote to approve of the information that is given to us or not to approve. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't work that way.
Honourable Leader, I thought at the conclusion of the comments of the minority leader, he agreed with you that there's nothing to be voted on. So we are just discussing the
Thank you very much.
discussing the statement presented to us.
If that was how he landed,
you have
that is how it should be.
The opportunity to comment as you choose. So, Honourable Kesel Ato Forson will start. Second Deputy Speaker to take the chair. Yes, Honourable Leader, what is the issue?
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to clear the air. They brought only 70 copies yesterday. So only 35 members on our side have copies of the statement. Leader is saying we shouldn't call it budget. The statement, only 35 members have copies. If the rest are in, so that we share them, as the ranking member and the chairman are contributing, the members will be going through. So if there are omissions and misleading and those things, we can be bringing them on track. That's what I wanted to bring on.
Honourable Leader, the leaders agreed, decided that we should start. I was of the view that we should start on Monday. But you leaders insisted that we should start today. So you knew the numbers you have, you knew your limitations, and you insisted that we start today. So please take steps to get the others who don't have them.
Mr. Speaker, we can start. I was just drawing the attention of the table office to make available copies as we can.
You don't need to address me to talk to table office.
Mr. Speaker, we've been in this house for some time. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Ato Forson is here with me. The Honourable Rickett is here with me. When mid-year reviews have been submitted without supplementary budget, we sometimes even start the debate immediately after and ask them. Yes, ask him. You are not the deputy minister. You are chairman of a committee. The deputy ministers are here. Former deputy ministers are here. The Speaker, we even started that very day. Please, let nobody mislead anybody here. With respect. And because it is not a motion properly so called, is the reason why you are calling Honourable Ato Forson. So he's not going to second the motion. He's going to contribute. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe with that understanding we can start. And I was saying yesterday that even though with the practice has been that whenever we have this, we do the debate, the comments one day and finish. I'm just saying that because today is a Friday, we can spill it over to Monday to conclude on Monday. Mr. Speaker, I believe we are moving on as a house. We should expand the frontiers of contribution.
Honorable Case Ratufos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to make some few comments on the media review that was recently presented to us. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, let me start by saying that in the minister's submission, he said that he did not appear before us to ask for an increase in our corporations. Neither did he appear before us to ask for an increase in taxes. Mr. Speaker, I submit that inasmuch as he may not have appeared before us to seek for additional expenditure, Mr. Speaker, he may end up by end of the year 2021 to exceed our Corporations Act. Mr. Speaker, I say this because last year, in the year 2020, the minister responsible for finance exceeded our corporations by 8.8 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, this is amounting to about $1.5 billion US. Mr. Speaker, this singular increase or over expenditure exceeding our corporations by 8.8 billion has been captured by the Auditor General's report for the year 2020. Mr. Speaker, that is why, for me, I am not encouraged at any time that the minister says to us that even though he may not come to seek for appropriations, the Speaker, that doesn't necessarily mean that the minister will not ask for appropriations. Mr. Speaker, I make reference to the Auditor General's report, Consolidated Fund for the year 2020, page 3. And the Speaker, going into it, you notice that 18 different MDAs exceeded their allocations for the year 2020 by 8.8 billion. So, Mr. Speaker, I can make this document available, and I'm sure every single member of Parliament has it. Mr. Speaker, let me also say that yes, I heard the minister once again saying that even though expenditures, revenues were not doing well, he has cut some expenditures accordingly. Mr. Speaker, to surprise you to know that our Minister of Finance is cutting expenditure at wrong places and overspending in wrong places. The two put together, he's doing the wrong things. Mr. Speaker, I say this for a reason. I say this because, Mr. Speaker, for instance, the minister responsible for finance and the Ministry of Finance collected National Health Insurance Levy for the first 6 months of the year. Mr. Speaker, page 90, Appendix 2B gives you this information. He collected an amount of 1,020 million Ghana cedis in the name of the National Health Insurance Levy. Mr. Speaker, to surprise you to know that even though he collected 1,020 million Ghana cedis, he only paid to the National Health Insurance an amount of 380 million Ghana cedis. So, Speaker, this is not right. Speaker, apart from that, he also collected an amount of 1,021 million Ghana cedis in the name of Ghana Education Trust Fund. Speaker, again, it will surprise you that in page 91, Appendix 2C, he has so far, in the first 6 months of the year, Speaker, he has only paid Ghana Education Trust Fund an amount of 439 million Ghana cedis. Speaker, it doesn't end there. Speaker, you will notice again in page 90, Appendix 2B, that our minister responsible for finance and the Ministry of Finance has collected an amount of 1,064 million Ghana cedis in the name of Ghana Road Fund. The Speaker, again, he has only paid 453 million in the name of Road Fund. So, the Speaker, clearly you will see that he is cutting expenditures at the wrong places. The Speaker, these statutory agencies actually need money for them to be able to function well. The Speaker, doesn't end there. The minister himself and the Ministry of Finance has programmed that in the year 2021, the first 6 months of the year, Mr. Speaker, they had programmed to spend $1,069,000,000 Ghana cedis being transferred to the District Assembly Common Fund. Mr. Speaker, it will surprise you to know that during that period, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance has only paid to the District Assembly Common Fund an amount of 415 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, that is why I'm telling you that the minister responsible for finance is cutting expenditures at the wrong places. Places that we will need them to actually spend because they've collected the money they were supposed to spend to spur economic growth. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, it will also surprise you that he's overspending in wrong places. Mr. Speaker, the minister is overspending in wrong places because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at page 91, Appendix 2C, Mr. Speaker, clearly, the minister had programmed, and the Ministry of Finance had programmed that goods and services, the first 6 months of the year, from January to June, they were going to spend 2.6 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, it surprises me that at the end of the first 6 months, this Ministry of Finance and our Minister of Finance have spent 4.4 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, over expenditure of about 1.8 billion Ghana cedis within 6 months. Mr. Speaker, this is goods and services. Goods and services. And goods and services, Mr. Speaker, is supposed to be used for the running of government agencies. Mr. Speaker, even though he's collecting taxes in the name of Get Fund, even though he's collecting taxes in the name of National Health Insurance, even though he's collecting taxes in the name of Road Fund, Mr. Speaker, he's not giving the taxes that he's collecting in the name of these statutory authorities, but rather he's increasing expenditure under goods and services. Mr. Speaker, this should not be allowed to continue. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't end there. And you notice in page 101, Appendix 4E. Mr. Speaker, Appendix 4E is a major concern to Mr. Speaker, because we all know that COVID-19 is a major threat to our economy and to our health and our very existence. Mr. Speaker, that is why, Mr. Speaker, we should encourage our minister to make funds available for the purposes of buying vaccines. Mr. Speaker, in the budget statement, he said that he has allocated an amount of 929 million Ghana cedis for COVID-19 vaccines. Mr. Speaker, I surprise you that so far, only 126 million Ghana cedis has been made available for the purposes of buying vaccines. 126 million, first 6 months of the year. Mr. Speaker, out of this 126 million, in page 109, Appendix 4E, clearly, Mr. Speaker, it says that they have paid Sputnik doses. That's 50% of the supply of Sputnik vaccine, 16 million. Mr. Speaker, I would have thought, we were told that, Mr. Speaker, they have so far not paid any amount to Sputnik. But this budget tells us that between January to June, they have released an amount of 16 million Ghana cedis for the purposes of Sputnik vaccine. Mr. Speaker, so you can see contradictions between what they have informed us and what has actually been done according to the budget statement. Mr. Speaker, we don't end there. We've been told, Mr. Speaker, as part of this budget statement, page 109, Appendix 4E. Mr. Speaker, Appendix 4E says that COVID-19 vaccines, it says also here that, Mr. Speaker, 15% of down payment for Johnson CoV-2 vaccines. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to page 101 of the budget statement, Appendix 4E 101. It says that 15% of down payment for 12,689,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of Parliament. They have paid 109 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, I am not aware that this August House has approved any amount for the purposes. Mr. Speaker, that is why I urge our minister responsible for finance and the Minister of Health to come back and give us the details. Mr. Speaker, clearly, our minister is cutting expenditures at the wrong places. Mr. Speaker, going into page 96, Appendix 3C.
Honourable Member, you should begin to wind up. You were allotted 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that I was allotted 15 minutes. That was the discussion we had yesterday, that ranking members will be given 15 minutes.
Anyway, my understanding is 10 minutes, ranking and the chairman.
No, Mr. Speaker, it's 15 minutes. That was what I was told.
Speaker, I believe even though eventually we agreed on 10 minutes, the way he's going, maybe you allow him at least 3 minutes. At least 3 minutes. So that, because already he's done 10 minutes. But, Mr. Speaker, if we cut him short now, we'll not be able to even conclude on any good point. So allow at least 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, so far I've done 3 minutes. Mr. Speaker, so I have 10 more minutes. Mr. Speaker, page 96. Page 96. Mr. Speaker, if you are to look at page 96, my major concern has to do with page 96. Mr. Speaker, the minister in page 96 has informed all of us that the expenditure of 1.4 billion meant for Agenda 1.4, provision of health infrastructure, Agenda 111, has been cut by 700 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, I would have thought that this is something His Excellency the President has informed all of us that is his priority. Mr. Speaker, earlier on, we were informed that Agenda 111 would have been completed in the year 2020. I would have thought that this would have been a priority of state. And so enough resources would be made available. Mr. Speaker, sadly, even though the original budget had said that they were going to make available an amount of 1.4 billion, only for us to see in the media review that this amount has been reduced by 700 million. Again, Mr. Speaker, you will notice that COVID-19 related expenditure has also been cut by another 700 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, clearly, our minister is actually moving the economy in the wrong direction. Mr. Speaker, I now move to the financing. Mr. Speaker, financing is important because that is where debts are accumulated. That is where, Mr. Speaker, I have not done 15 minutes. So if you can allow me to flow. Mr. Speaker, financing is important. Financing is important because that is where we accumulate debt. Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Ghana recently, as part of the MPC, announced to us that in the first quarter of the year 2021, Ghana's public debt is 332.4 billion Ghana cedis. So, Speaker, this has moved from 291 billion to 332.4 billion Ghana cedis in 3 months, the first 3 months of the year. So, Speaker, in the budget statement, if you are to look at Appendix 2A, page 89, the minister informs that foreign borrowings in the first 6 months of the year is 21 billion Ghana cedis. So, Speaker, it says that domestic borrowing in the year 2021, the first 6 months, they have borrowed an amount of 6.7 billion from commercial banks and also borrowed an amount of 30 billion from
Please wind up.
Mr. Speaker, I've timed myself and I'm not up to 15 minutes yet. I've timed myself, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honestly, I am not even up to 10 minutes. I'm now on the 9th minute.
Honorable.
I haven't. Mr. Speaker, clearly.
Honorable, I give you 2 minutes, please.
Clearly, Mr. Speaker, what it means here is that, Mr. Speaker, this government is piling on debt. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to say that in the year 2021, government is still going to continue this borrowing. Mr. Speaker, I project that the way government is going, our public debt by the end of December 2021 will be 360 billion Ghana cedis. 360 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, if you are to express this on a projected GDP of 339 billion Ghana cedis, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the year 2021, Ghana's public debt will hit 82% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, at the time that our tax revenue is not performing, Mr. Speaker, at the time that everything is coming down, certainly, Mr. Speaker, certainly, our public debt as we see it is not sustainable, and we expect the minister to have dealt with it in the media review. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Kwahu Kwarteng, but before then, I will allow Honorable Speaker to take the seat.
Yes, Honorable Kweku Kwate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is true that in 2020, government exceeded appropriation, but government exceeded appropriation for reasons we all know. COVID-19 was not anticipated at the time the 2020 budget was being prepared, and in accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the minister came to this House for permission to exceed the allowable threshold deficit, which approval we granted. It's important that we keep that in the record and not suggest that somehow the minister exceeded appropriation in a manner that is unlawful. Two, Mr. Speaker, the President took a decision to downsize his government. The President, as a result, has made savings together with a reduction in conferencing and foreign travels. So today we are seeing savings, which as I will discuss, has made it possible to maintain the fiscal stability that we require. Mr. Speaker, interest payments, for instance, we have made a savings of 3 billion below what the ceiling this Parliament approved. And that is on page 22 of the review that was submitted to us. Mr. Speaker, it is just wrong for anybody to give the impression that the government or the minister is cutting my expenditures in the wrong places and spending in the wrong places. That has to be laid to rest. But, Mr. Speaker, the presentation that was made by the finance minister carried 3 important points. First, that he came here not to ask for more money. He came here to this House not to ask for more money. And we understand. COVID-19 brought its own burdens. As a result, a gap of some 14 billion was created for which government needed money. In addition to the gap, government also needed to find money to finance expenditures we had not anticipated. The only way government could deal with this challenge, as many governments, in fact all governments across the world did, was to borrow in a way that was necessary. After that, every good finance minister and government would want to consolidate. And it is the reason government came here yesterday and said, I am not asking for more money. It is a refreshing of the vision. 2, government came here and said, I would not impose any taxes. Why, Mr. Speaker? We all know that in the midst of COVID, government had to provide resources to support the private sector to ensure that the path for recovery will be less painful. A government that will do this will not turn around and impose taxes on the very people it is seeking to provide support for. That explains why, again, the minister came here yesterday and to the delight of Ghanaians said, I am not imposing any taxes. That again, Mr. Speaker, is a refreshing of the vision and reflects government sensitivity to what business needs. 3, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps this is the most important bit. After asking for no money, after seeking to impose no taxes, government said, we are committed to preserve all the social interventions we have committed to deliver to Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, the interface of governance between government and the governed is your social services. That is where you provide relief to people. That is how you reduce poverty. Mr. Speaker, accordingly, as we were advised yesterday, the anti-COVID-19 responses, including the vaccination, has been preserved. The free SHS has been preserved. The road agenda, including new and rehabilitation, has been preserved. Agenda 111 to provide modern hospitals for every district has been preserved. Teacher trainee allowance has been preserved. Nursing trainee allowance preserved. School feeding program preserved. LEAP program preserved. 1D, 1F preserved. Planting for food and jobs preserved. Mr. Speaker, the pension reforms have been preserved. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on and on. But it is important that we make the point that when a government is not asking for more money, is not asking for more taxes, and yet is committing to preserve those things that matter to people, then government must be doing something right. And Mr. Speaker, that doing something right is cutting expenditure in places that could be cut and putting the money where it is important. And that is why we see, Mr. Speaker, that the economy is beginning to recover. Real GDP growth is beginning to recover. Inflation is down to 7.8%, better than the projected 8% for this year. The Bank of Ghana policy rate was reduced to 13.5 in May. As we speak, that has been maintained. That is credit cheaper for the private sector. The private sector can borrow the economy, create jobs, and reduce poverty. Mr. You see that when revenue under 4 billion, the government was to look at those places within expenditure that government could cut without hurting the people. That presenting to the international community and the market that this government is determined to maintain fiscal discipline, therefore bring your money into this economy and invest. That again is a refreshing observation. Mr. Speaker, we also see, in addition to all these interventions, that government has deployed the CARES program, the Obatampa program, which is a program to help businesses and households recover from the unfortunate impact of COVID-19. And under that, again, we see, Mr. Speaker, we see very encouraging deployment. The financial services sector has been cleaned, and we are seeing the deployment of GESAL, an arrangement in which credit to agriculture, so that our farmers can borrow and improve agriculture and bring us more food sufficiency. GESA has been deployed, and yesterday we were told that under Obatampa program, this has also been preserved. Mr. Speaker, yesterday again, the minister announced to us that the listing of Ghana as a country with strategic deficiencies in our anti-money laundering regime has come to an end, and now Ghana has been delisted, and by that, our image in the international community as a destination where you can come and do clean business has been enhanced. Again, Mr. Speaker, this was a healthy observation. Mr. Speaker, in order to help businesses, what was traditionally the NBSSI, National Board for Small Scale Industry, has been scaled up and is now called the Ghana Enterprises agency, Ghana Enterprises Agency, and this agency is to give government the backing that will allow it to help the private sector in the recovery. Mr. Speaker, in all this, government has done to speed up the recovery and to create the jobs the Honorable Minister referred to. In conclusion, therefore, Mr. Speaker, it was a good review we had from the Honorable Minister. Our task as Parliament is to look at the good commitment the Minister communicated in the review and to ensure that we stick with this, we stick to this path, deliver on the commitments, and ensure that the desired outcomes are achieved for this generation and for generations unborn. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Jaja, yes, Jaja.
Honorable members, I've just had a brief from the table office, and I flagged some issues for us to discuss later with leadership as to what we are doing. We have to be very clear in our minds what we are doing so that at the end of it, we know what decision to take. From the brief I've been given, it's quite hodgepodge, and we need to do that. But the debate will continue. We will continue with the debate. And I don't know whether it's debate anyway. I'm told there are comments that are being made. And that is a statement, it's not a motion. And so there are some procedural legal issues we have to look at. But we'll continue with your presentations. At the end of the day, we'll take the decision. Now, the next person from the list I've been given is the Honorable John Abdullahi Jinapo. I'm told that you have maximum of 8 minutes and minimum of 5 minutes. I was told that the ranking member was given 15, and then the chair 15 minutes. Then the rest, minimum 5, maximum 8. That is what I've been told. Now I'm told it's reviewed to 10 minutes. So I've just been informed. It's resolved. So 10 minutes. Okay. You are starting at 1:32.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, in yesterday's media budget review, contrary to those flowery, sugar-coated words that were infused with biblical quotations, this budget statement has only come to confirm our worst fear, that indeed the Ghanaian economy is in a terrible state. Wow. Mr. Speaker, the Ghanaian economy is in the intensive care unit if you take time to read this document. Wow. Mr. Speaker, not just that, the future looks bleak if you listen to the minister very well. Mr. Speaker, this budget would only bring hardship, suffering, and anguish to the ordinary Ghanaian. Mr. Speaker, I refer to page 21 of the budget, paragraph 102. This year alone, this minister has introduced about 9 different tax handles. And so if you tell us that he hasn't come to ask for taxes, this is just a media review. Already he's introduced a pollution and sanitation tax.
He's introduced a data fund levy. He's introduced a COVID health levy. He's introduced a financial sector cleanup levy. He's even taxing LPG this year. This year, that's what the minister is doing. And so what is this issue of you are not taxing? Despite all these tax handles, Mr. Speaker, the minister made it clear that he was expected to get 35.8 billion in the first 6 months. At the end of the period, he had only 24 billion, a shortfall of 10 billion. Wow. That is a shortfall. And I refer to paragraph 109 of the budget. You would see the figures there. Mr. Speaker, when you have such a shortfall, what you do is to cut down on expenditure. And the areas to cut down on expenditure has to do with goods and services. His target was to spend 2.6 billion in the first 6 months. At the end of June, he ended up spending 4.4 billion cedis, representing an increase of 63.5%. Really? Where is the good management of the economy? Where in this budget can you tell me that there's prudence and fiscal discipline? Mr. Speaker, refer to page 3, paragraph 22. As of December 2020, our total debt stock was 291 billion. In just 6 months, Mr. Speaker, our debt has increased by 43 billion cedis. Wow. In 6 months. Meanwhile, your revenue has increased by only 24 billion. So your debt increment is about double what you even made in terms of revenue. Mr. Speaker, the primary balance, which is core, because the primary balance excludes what you use in terms of debt servicing. Our target was 4.8 billion. By the end of June, it has skyrocketed to 7.3 billion. Wow. Mr. Speaker, despite all this mess, despite all this evidence to show that we are on the wrong trajectory, the minister stood here, quoted the Bible, and told us that he will continue to pursue fiscal consolidation. What are you consolidating? Mr. Speaker, what are you consolidating with these figures that I am providing? But I'm not surprised that we are here. This is the IMF Regional Outlook document. I will refer you to table SA2, overall fiscal balance, including grants and government debts. If you look at all the countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, 44 countries, including Ghana, all these countries were affected by COVID. Our deficit, the highest among all the 14, was 16.4%. Cote d'Ivoire did 5%. Even Chad, they did 1.2%. Congo, they did 1.9%. Ghana alone, 16.4%. This is the IMF document, Mr. Speaker, and I'm ready to table it before the table office. It is titled International Monetary Fund, Regional Economic Outlook, Sub-Saharan Africa. This is the document. We are members of the IMF, we are members of the World Bank. We have not protested. We are subject to Article 4 consultations. We have not protested. This is the evidence. Mr. Speaker, every single element I make here, I provide the basis and the evidence. Mr. Speaker,
just a minute. Chairman, any point of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is not debating what is on the table. The figures he's quoting.
The honourable member is going to do what?
He's not speaking to the item we are commenting on.
Please, Chairman, may you resume your seat. That's not a point of order. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, in the budget, the minister says that the minimum wage has been increased by 4%. What it means by receiving 100 cedi. At the end of the period, you will get 104 cedi. Meanwhile, the inflation rate
is 8%. If you apply Fisher's equation and discount that 4% by 8%, it means that the ordinary worker at the end of the month, the purchasing power is 94 cedi. So this budget is nothing but a killer budget. This is what we call a Kofi budget, Mr. Speaker. Because the ordinary worker, I cry for the ordinary worker, that despite this budget, the ordinary worker will be impoverished and will be worse off at the end of the period. Mr. Speaker, it is stated in the budget. In this media review, it is stated here. It is stated here, Mr. Speaker. If you look at the statement, it is there. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the financial sector, page 16, I'll give you the page and the paragraph. Page 16, paragraph 87. The media review. Despite telling us that the financial sector is doing well, Mr. Speaker, credit to the private sector grew by negative compared with a growth rate of 2.7. Credit to the private sector is 1%. Mr. Speaker, the current account deficit widened from 0.8% to 1.3%. Mr. Speaker, total assets dropped from 23 to 17.2% within the financial sector. Mr. Speaker, if this is not an abysmal performance, what else can this be? I'm not surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the Vice President for the first time did not join the minister here because he will not follow him. Mr. Speaker, this mess that we find ourselves, this cosodiosis that we find ourselves in, let me put it on record that it is not because of demons. Yes. Neither is it because of principalities. It is because of bad management, incompetence, and a toxic element of non-performance. Yes. Mr. Speaker, let me also place it on record that we are not against the state increasing its stake in oil blocks. But this side of the house will not be part of any arrangement to amend the Petroleum Revenue Management Act aimed at going into the Heritage Fund. If the NDC did not have the vision to set up the PRMA, when we had the COVID issue, you wouldn't have gone into COVID. You wouldn't have gone into the PRMA, into the Stabilization Fund, which is captured in this statement, to withdraw 1.2 billion to spend on COVID-related expenditure, Mr. Speaker.
So, Honourable Member, conclusion.
Mr. Speaker, in concluding, it is obvious that the ordinary worker is suffering. Yes. That the ordinary teacher is suffering. Yes. That the woman in the house cannot even make ends meet. Yes. Mr. Speaker, let me put on record. If elections were held today, the MPP government will lose and lose abysmally as far as the economy is concerned. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate you on that special award that you got here. Thank you very much. Honourable Speaker.
Honourable members, this is not award time. We are now dealing with the media review. So let's focus. Now, the list I have from the majority side is the time for Honourable Yao Buama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
10 minutes.
For the opportunity to make some few comments on the media review budget presented by the Minister of Finance in accordance with Section 28 of the Public Financial Management Act. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side have confirmed the reason why they are in the opposition. Clearly, from their presentations, Mr. Speaker, they've made a lot of academic presentations or comments that will keep them in opposition for some time. Mr. Speaker, the Minister came here and spoke about his completion, consolidation, and continuity agenda with the aim of fixing the economy which had been broken as a result of the COVID. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that jobs remain job creation remains at the heart of every Ghanaian at this point in time, Mr. Speaker. Ghanaians are not interested in academic arguments on radio, on TV, and on this floor. Ghanaians want to hear a very comprehensive plan aimed at eliminating or reducing unemployment, Mr. Speaker. And we're expecting the minority to have come out with an alternative of Antampa or Ghana Cares program in support of government's program. We haven't seen anything, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday they were expecting some increases in taxes, a supplementary budget, and they were giving the sulia, which in English we call the nutmeg, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't think...
Honourable Member, you use a word which is not English.
I said nutmeg. It's referred to as nutmeg. In football.
You said sulia.
Football.
Sulia means ninth man.
Nutmeg. Nutmeg in football, in soccer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if
the soccer means
nutmeg.
Nutmeg.
Yes.
Which means sulia.
Sulia.
I don't think the Hausa sulia means what you have said.
Mr. Speaker, this is a soccer version.
You have attempted.
Very well. Mr. Speaker, the minister was very honest with the House, gave a global overview of the performance of global economies, to the extent that the global economy shrank by 3.3% during the COVID period, Mr. Speaker. Gold prices plummeted. Now gold is selling at about 1,800 an ounce per dollar. Oil during the budget was estimated at $59.3. Now it's around $71.3 a barrel. Mr. Speaker, all those considerations were put into account. Mr. Speaker, but what must a serious government do in order to turn around the economy? That is why the Minister of Finance came with a 100 billion Obatampa Cares program. What do we have in it? A lot of people don't understand it and haven't taken pains to understand it. It's Ghana's version of an economic recovery program during this COVID period. And what does it seek to do? To create a lot of job opportunities for the youth. That is what the youth of this country are looking for. From the statement, Mr. Speaker, over 71% youth are under the age of 35. And what are we seeking to do for them? Under the 1D, 1F, over 150,000 jobs have been created out of the 104 companies that are in operation, Mr. Speaker. We are expecting to increase the number of jobs under the program. Mr. Speaker, if you go to paragraph 151, which lists or gives an elaboration of the Ghana Cares program, Mr. Speaker, you see that the Minister of Finance has signed a number of compact arrangements with various ministries: Agriculture Ministry, the Trade Ministry, the Tourism Ministry, and other ministries. All with a view to create a lot of jobs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me draw your attention to Mr. Speaker, in paragraph 157, the Ghana Incentive Phase a Risk Sharing Scheme for Agricultural Lending, the GRINSAL, is aimed at giving guarantees and technical assistance to banks in order to lower the risks that they perceive in lending to the agricultural sector. The Speaker, is very important. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Cares program under the Ghana Commodity Exchange program aims at reducing post-harvest losses, especially our countrymen in agriculture, which is very commendable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over 120,000 jobs are expected to be created under a skills training program by the Ministry of Labor Relations and Labor Relations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the interministerial strategy for job creation under paragraph 185, Mr. Speaker, a well-coordinated program for the next 3 years to create over 1 million jobs within the youth and sports sector, the lands and natural resources sector, and also the Labor Relations Ministry is very commendable. Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to focus strictly on job creation with this presentation. Mr. Speaker, efforts to address unemployment situation from January to June 2021 facilitated the employment over 201,850 persons through cooperative development programs, the Youth Employment Agency, placement by public employment centers and private employment agencies. Mr. Speaker, under paragraph 189, skills training, over 60 direct jobs and 300 indirect jobs in the Achuma-Kwahoma district, Afija, Kwabre North, Seche South, Jabin, Ahafuano South, and Ahafuano West district. Over 1,317 youth were given various skills training in areas such as food and bakery and what have you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, consequently, another 2,983 youth were trained in various vocational and technical skills. Mr. Speaker, this is what the youth of this country wanted to hear from our Minister of Finance with respect to jobs, unemployment. And government is on the right track. Government has put in place the right measures to reduce youth unemployment. We expect our colleagues to have come out with an alternative plan after the minister had presented this review, only to come and debate or make comments based on academic figures, Mr. Speaker. So all in all, the Minister of Finance came here, spoke in accordance with law, gave the country a new breath of hope in respect of job creation, and we must commend him for that kind gesture. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Well, you couldn't use all your 10 minutes. On the other side, it is the turn of Honorable Isaac Adongo.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, being mindful of the state of the Ghanaian economy, I was very hopeful and very expectant of very robust policies and programs that will turn this economy around. This is an economy that has attracted the concerns of major international bodies. Reports issued by Fitch indicate that Ghana's economy is not well. Mr. Speaker, a report commissioned and issued by Goldman Sachs, a reputable investment bank in the United States of America, with input from Harvard Research, from the World, which is in my hands, show that for almost every indicator comparable between Ghana and its peers, Ghana is worse. And everybody would have wished that we would have focused on how to deal with it. But here, I was surprised that we were asking the would-be members of a cathedral to be paying tithes and collections for a church that is yet to be born. When the major problems of education, healthcare, and road infrastructure are staring us in the face, we are already collecting tithes in advance of the building of a church. But, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague made me very sad, but confirmed the fears that we have had over the last couple of years when the president put together that elephant-sized government. He has admitted that after right-sizing that elephant government, in 6 months, they saved this country 3 billion Ghana cedis. That is very sad. It means that for a year, they were wasting an average of about 6 billion Ghana cedis on that elephant-sized government. Over a 4-year period, you have wasted the taxpayers' money to the tune of about 24 billion. And we told you so. We told you so, that your government was irrelevant because of the numbers. Today you are admitting that when you listen and you cut down the size, you are saving us 3 billion every 6 months. Thank you very much for listening. But Mr. Speaker, the minister said he did not come to ask for money. In Parliament, we don't have money sitting here that will give to you. You come to ask for permission for you to go and do the difficult task and collect money to fund the economy. So when you have already come, as my honorable colleague said, and listed so many taxes and we say go and collect it and you are not able to collect it, if you come back to ask for more money, you don't have the capacity to collect. And if you insist, then it means you have to borrow. And given our debt situation, what the minister would have done is to bring forward the day of reckoning for the collapse of this economy. And that is why he didn't do so. But Mr. Speaker, it is very frightening that an economy at this moment in time, and I want to go back to the Goldman Sachs report. Goldman Sachs report, which I am willing to tender, makes it very clear that when you take our peers, Ghana is the only country that borrows a lot on the Eurobond market in relation to its size. And yet, when it borrows more, its economy doesn't grow to compensate for the borrowing. So Ghana is the #1 country with outstanding Eurobonds to GDP of 17.5%. And yet our peers that took a lot of Eurobonds have grown their economy such that the percentages are very negligible. But as when we borrow, we don't grow the economy. What happens? Mr. Speaker, we have also been told that as we speak today, the yield on Ghana's bonds, is the highest in sub-Saharan Africa and emerging economies. Mr. Speaker, what this means is that the risk that investors price for our original bonds, investors are now afraid that Ghana may go into default, and so they are pricing higher yield. So if we were issuing a Eurobond of $100 and we're getting a coupon of 8%, which is $8, investors are now saying, the only time I'll buy the Ghana bond is for you to reduce the price to say $80. So you are losing $20. In order that when I buy it and I get the $8, I make a yield of about 15 or 9%. Mr. Speaker, what that means is that Ghana bonds are now being sold at Donkomi on the market. How can you run an economy such as the most precious Ghana? We now must be handling our bonds like junk bonds and reduce the price significantly for people to buy. Mr. Speaker, the same report also indicates that Ghana, among all its peers...
Honorable Member, you use a word that is not English. You said...
Donkomi means cheap auctioning. I wish I could have some Nagati word that would make it easier. But selling something cheaper than its true value. Mr. Speaker, the minister...
Exactly.
Yeah.
What Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim said.
Yes.
Is the meaning of Dongomi. Not what you said.
So Ghana has been reduced to clear.
That is Dongomi. Not what you said.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, now that we are reducing to clear, it is even making me more worried that we are now going onto the market at a time we are reducing to clear to issue what we call a sustainable bond. And Mr. Speaker, the minister makes reference to the Millennium, the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Speaker, under paragraph 433, Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals call for urgent action by all countries aimed at encouraging sustained economic growth underpinned by social, economic, and environmental sustainability. A blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and in the future. Mr. Speaker, this will create the impression that the sustainable bonds that we are going to issue are in. Mr. Speaker, no. When you have a country where your debt to GDP is 80% plus, you have a country where you are spending about 91% of your tax revenue to pay for interest costs, and you are now borrowing to pay interest costs at 7.3 billion, which is your primary balance. Mr. Speaker, that country becomes very risky to every investor. And so in an attempt to avoid investors realizing that this is a Ghana bond, and you know Ghana, these are the numbers, and they look scary, you look to find a name to polish it. So you say sustainable bonds, when it is not sustainable. Mr. Speaker, the sustainable bond is nothing other than a scary, decorated elephant. And no investor who understands the dynamics of this country and loves Ghana should give Ghana more poison. Nobody should be buying our bonds at this point in time. Because what we need is not more borrowing. What we need is more effort to grow the economy and to create the revenue streams that will reduce the level of the deficit that we are creating. Mr. Speaker, a very interesting article that was published by Graphic is in my hands. And this article was a conversation among international capital investment analysts about Ghana. So in that article, an analyst from the Center for Global Development made a quotation, and that quotation he said, Ghana is going to issue a sustainable bond. Ghana is planning to raise a sustainable bond as much as 1 billion through a sale of sustainable bonds, including Africa's first social debt to fund a flagship policy, free SHS, to broaden access to education. Mr. Speaker, the chief economic correspondent for Africa for McDonald's, which is the Economist magazine, responded by saying sarcastically that Ken Ofori-Atta is the most innovative finance minister in Africa. His colleague, Professor Silman, then came in and made a comment. He said, Mr. Speaker, unless I have missed something, but is innovation not one step closer to default? And that a country with its debt to GDP of about 80% plus, issuing a sustainable bond is not different from your traditional bonds. Then McDormand, who said he is an innovative investor, now comes back to eat his words and say innovation is a double-edged sword. So that is how we are now even treated by investor community and analysts. That we are trying to find very different innovative ways to describe our bonds that are now being sold as we describe as reduced to clear. And that innovation in our case is one step closer to default. This is how they have managed the economy, and I'm not surprised that we are now looking into the realm of spirituality to find out who can better kill demons and principalities. But Mr. Speaker, the biggest deception is that when we approve the 2021 Eurobond program, we were very clear that the 3 billion was to be disbursed in the following, and I'm holding before me the report of the Finance Committee that was approved in this House. We said 1.5 billion of that money should go to finance the budget. Another 1.5 billion of that money should be used for liability management. And Mr. Speaker, those two gives us 3 billion, which we already issued in April 2021. So we have closed that chapter. But we also said that if market conditions are favorable, said that we can get better interest rate than we issued for our 2026 bond, we should now borrow 2 billion to come and refinance the 2026. How is that a sustainable bond that is meant? In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, how is borrowing to go and finance 2026 bond be described as sustainable bonds meant to provide free education? Mr. Speaker, the deception of the international investor must cease, and we must begin to build confidence and credibility within the sphere of the international market. Otherwise, we will soon have a bigger challenge of access for funding, and they will run away from our bonds. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
May we now listen to Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah.
Speaker Naumba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make a few comments on the review of the budget delivered to us this mid-year by the Minister responsible for Finance. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to quickly respond to a couple of comments that my very good brother, the Member of Parliament for Bolga Central, just made. And he says that he was expecting to hear of a robust program during the Minister's delivery yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit respectfully to my colleague that if he listened attentively, the Minister responsible for Finance actually laid out a robust program called the Ghana Cares of Batampa program. My hope was that he will probably take up the program benchmark by benchmark and maybe argue that it is not fit for purpose or not able to deliver on the objectives. But to suggest that there is no recovery program or he didn't hear of one, I think does not sit well. Mr. Speaker, again, he talks of the 3 billion Ghana cedi savings that the chairman of the Finance Committee spoke about and makes the argument that it is by virtue of downsizing the government. Mr. Speaker, respectfully, the chairman of the Finance Committee was very clear that that 3 billion Ghana cedis was savings in interest payments, and it was occasioned as a result of the improved debt management strategy, the reprofiling. And I think that it's important that we put that clearly on the record. This is a House of Records. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Member of Parliament from Bolga Central, says today to this House that in reading from Fitch and Goldman Sachs and an article in the Daily Graphic and from a chief economist for Africa and another professor, there is some analysis about the Ghanaian economy which we should all hold and believe. The last time I checked, our colleagues on the other side told us that if you want to find policy credibility in any economic document, it comes from the IMF. That's what they told us. So I'm surprised that the IMF Executive Board Article 4 consultation of Ghana is not what he's referring to. And I'd like to refresh his memory on it. Paragraph 1 of this press statement issued by the International Monetary Fund, which they believe gives political credibility, July 2021, says Ghana was hit hard by COVID-19. The government response helped contain the pandemic and supported the economy, but it came at the cost of a record fiscal deficit. The economic outlook is improving, even though risks remain, including from the evolution of the pandemic and rising debt vulnerabilities. Mr. Speaker, the IMF that my colleagues hold on to goes further to say that the pandemic had a severe impact on the economic activity. Growth slowed down to 0.4% in 2020 from 6.5% in 2019. It goes on to say an economic recovery is underway. Growth is expected to rebound to 4.7 by 2021. Mr. Speaker, these are the words of the organization that my colleagues on the other side say bring policy credibility. So if we want to quote international documents and quote platforms to buttress our arguments, I believe there is not one that will supersede the verdict of the International Monetary Fund. Mr. Speaker, the story of Ghana's economy is simple. An economy that had dwindled to 3.4% growth by 2016, that had frozen public sector jobs, that was having an energy crisis, which between 2017 and 2019 was growing average about 7%, had, in accordance with the report of the Minister for Employment, created about 3 million jobs, was delivering flagship programs that were impacting the quality of lives, and then it was hit by COVID. And the verdict is out there. Growth stagnated, constraints in further job creation, general economic difficulties that we all realize, dwindling revenues of government, and as a result, unprecedented borrowing, which is what took our debt to GDP ratio to about 76%. Mr. Speaker, the good news is that the recovery has started. I want to quickly read, for the benefit of my colleagues, the Bank of Ghana Monetary Policy Committee's press release of July 26, 2021, paragraphs 5 and 6. It says, in the domestic economy, the Ghana Statistical Service reported an estimated GDP growth of 3.1% for the first quarter of 2021. Yet another sign of strong recovery from the impact of the pandemic, even though still lower than the pre-pandemic growth of 7% recorded for the first quarter of 2020.
Non-oil GDP grew at 4.6% from 7.9% growth in the same comparative period. Mr. Speaker, though we know 3.1 for quarter one, they have a prediction for quarter two. They say beyond the first quarter, high-frequency economic indicators for the second quarter of the year point to a sharp pickup in economic activity relative to the last year. The bank's updated composite index of economic activity, that's looking into the crystal ball, recorded a strong annual growth of 31% in May 2021 relative to the contraction of 10% in 2020. Mr. Speaker, it is therefore clear that the recovery has started. 3.1% in quarter one and a 33.1% May growth in the composite index of economic activity can only mean that by the end of this year, we should be having a high appreciable level of growth. And I'll take my colleagues back to the IMF again. The IMF is predicting about 4.7% growth by the end of this year. The government of Ghana is predicting about 5% or 5.1% growth. It is obvious that we were growing, we were hit by COVID, it's coming back. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that the finance minister spoke about yesterday, which I think we should take delight in, is the fact that we are keeping within the fiscal framework as was put before this parliament last year. Our revenue measures are performing within expectation, expenditure is performing within expectation, and our expectation again is that it will translate into the results that we are looking for. I think that what we have to focus on moving forward is how efficiently these resources that are being mobilized will be applied, so that in the end, in particular, what the average Ghanaian is looking for, jobs, incomes, and improvement in the quality of life, is occasioned. Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I want to quickly speak to the subject of debt. We acknowledge that we are in a position that we need to pull back from, and that position is clear. We got here primarily because of COVID. But, Mr. Speaker, if anybody is to make a fetish out of nominal debt figures, then we have to also update some records. One of the things we should look at is the rate at which debt is accumulated, the rate of debt accumulation. Quite recently, our colleagues on the other side have been using the CD-denominated nominal debt to suggest that this administration has perhaps been the worst in terms of managing debt or borrowing. Mr. Speaker, just on records, between 1992 and 1996, the Rawlings administration grew Ghana's debt stock by 473%. Between 1997 and 2000, the Rawlings administration in its second term, 313%. The Kufuor administration in its first term grew our debt stock by 53%. And in the second term, 30%. Admittedly, HIPIC had an impact on it. Mr. Speaker, the Mills administration, 2009 to 2012, grew our debt stock by 269%. The Mahama administration grew our debt stock by 240%. President Akufo-Addo between 2017 and 2020, yes, has grown our debt stock, but it's by 139%. So if indeed you are talking about who has added more to Ghana's debt, which I believe even ought not to be the essence of our debate, Mills did 269, the good professor, His Excellency the former president. Mahama did 240, His Excellency the former president, and President Akufo-Addo did 139 in his first term. But the most important thing is, what is the story of our debt sustainability? And that is why we need to improve on revenue mobilization so that we can service and deliver without necessarily resorting to borrowing. My hope is that we continue to support measures like this that deliver results for us. I thank Mr. Speaker for the opportunity.
You are exactly 10 minutes. Exactly within the 10 minutes. We now have the opportunity to listen to Honorable Benjamin Komla Bodo.
Right, Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. The budget under review was presented by the Majority Leader, Honorable Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu. But when he looks behind now, he cannot find his troops. They have abandoned him because they don't seem to be interested in it. Mr. Speaker, he has produced a plan on behalf of the government. It's both revenue side and expenditure. Now, over the past 6 months, the revenue side has failed you, but you stick out your neck to say that you are going to spend as originally planned. Is that not foolhardiness? Mr. Speaker, I wonder what it is that you don't have the money. You come to Parliament and say that I have not come to ask for new money. You have not come to ask for new money. That is true. But your revenue has failed you. How are you going to spend 110 billion? It means that there is something hiding somewhere. There is something definitely hiding somewhere. And that brings me to the major characteristic of the financial management of this country. This is the most non-transparent and the most unfair government as far as the management of our expenditure is concerned. Mr. Speaker, when the requests are made for disclosures or details of expenditure items, this government refuses blatantly. I remember when the government came for the stabilization fund of 218 million US dollars. We asked on this platform, we asked in this house that they should give us the details. They said no, they will give it in the mid-year review. Up till today, we don't have the details. The COVID-19 expenditures for which these monies were taken, we still don't know how they were spent. And that is why people are calling for forensic audit of the COVID-19 expenditures. Yes, it is necessary so that we can know the details. The presentation on page 93 of the statement regarding COVID-19 expenditures, that is appendices 4A and 4D. They don't details that we should accept. The minister must come again and give us the details. Mr. Speaker, the government is saying that they want to introduce a new program that will bring 1 million jobs to the youth of Ghana. Already, the government has overspent the goods and services budget by 1.7 billion. That's 63.5% higher than what was budgeted. But it's not asking for any money to fund that. So how is it going to be implemented? How is that going to be implemented? I think the youth of Ghana should not be excited about these promises. This is just another verbal game being played by this administration. It is not possible that without making funds available, this program can be achieved. Mr. Speaker, one thing I have noted also is that there is an insatiable desire by this government to spend at the center. And that is why they have capped funds which are meant to carry out activities in the local areas. The funds which they have capped, they include the road fund, the gate fund, the National Health Insurance, and this is robbing these funds from carrying out their activities. Right, Honorable Speaker, it has left these sectors in shambles. Debt fund cannot pay contractors. Road fund cannot pay its road contractors. NIHIA cannot pay suppliers. And that's because these funds have been capped and the government is spending the money at the center. When we are all saying that we are pursuing decentralization, we as a nation have sat down and agreed that let's take this money from the ESLA to fund our road projects. Then you come and you cap it. What is the meaning of that? Great fund, we have decided to take 2.5% of the VAT and give for educational activities. You have come to cap it. So what is happening in the educational sector? It's down. Right, Honorable Speaker? Even the District Assembly's Common Fund, this government has capped it. And even when the Supreme Court said, no, don't cap it, they have used surreptitious means to come and take the money from the Common Fund. For instance, 489 to be taken for school feeding. So they are only insatiable at spending the money at the center instead of allowing the various sectors to function properly. Mr. Speaker, currently the government is again accumulating debts to other government units. For instance, the debt fund is being owed, this Assembly's Common Fund is being owed over 1 billion Ghana cedis by the Ministry of Finance. In 2020, for the third and fourth quarters, they only gave small payments. And 2021, first quarter is gone, they have not paid anything to the Assembly's Common Fund. If you recall, during the last media review brought by the minister, they had to go and borrow from IMF in order to pay the statutory funds. And they have started accumulating the debt again. When you collect the money, give it to them. You are not doing that, so you are accumulating debt. It will come to a time when we will have to go and sell bonds, reduce to clear bonds, in order to come and pay the various funds, what the government is owing. I think that the minister has to go back to the drawing board and bring changes. We will be ready to deal with them. We'll be ready to deal with them so that these other units, government units, will function properly. For now, I think that the management of the economy is not proper. It is not helping Ghana at all. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. Yes, thank you, Honourable Member. You are also within your 10 minutes. I think you are all doing well this time. You are staying put to the time allotted to each member. May we now listen to the Honourable Deputy Minister of Finance, Honourable Abina Osei Asare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a few comments on yesterday's mid-year fiscal policy review that was delivered by the Minister responsible for finance. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, I just want to clarify some statements that have been made on the floor because this House is a House of records. One, Mr. Speaker, my colleague on the other side mentioned that according to the Auditor General's report for 2020, 18 ministries, departments, and agencies have exceeded their appropriation. Mr. Speaker, it is not the same as the total appropriation being exceeded, unless it has been stated categorically that the total appropriation that was approved by Parliament has been exceeded. There is a difference between that, because in 2020, Mr. Speaker, you all know that with the onset of the COVID, most of these ministries, departments, and agencies hadn't planned for expenditure on COVID. So government had to take money from the center to support them in that regard. So there is nothing like we exceeding the total appropriation given to this House. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, he mentioned the statutory funds and the shortfall. Mr. Speaker, you compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. When he got to the road fund, he chose to use the collections against the actual page. But when you look in the budget, and in Appendix 2C, the road fund, we projected to pay 136 million and not the 1.04 billion he mentioned. We projected to pay 136 million and we were able to pay 453 million, even given the constraints that we have. And also, I just want to put it on record that we have paid the third quarter of the DACF, and we are about to pay the first quarter of the 2021 DACF as well. So, Mr. Speaker, we are on track, and we hope to complete that. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side keep talking about capping. Capping is nothing but taking money from these statutory funds and using it for other equally important government projects. That is capping. Capping is not about taking the money and putting it outside government coffers, but rather channeling it into other equally important government projects. So when we cap, we use it for other things that will best serve the implementation of the budget. So, Mr. Speaker, but I want to put it on record that DACF has not been capped. We have gone according to the Supreme Court's ruling. We haven't capped DACF. So I just want to put that on record, Mr. Speaker. And again, my colleagues on the other side keep talking about Ghana is, we've gone to borrow. But Mr. Speaker, we were all here when we mentioned that we are expecting 72 billion Ghana cedis in our revenue generation. And then when it comes to our expenditure, we are hoping to spend 110 billion. So between that, Parliament approved for us the 41 billion for financing. And Mr. Speaker, so this is nothing new. What is important is that we live within the financing limit that has been given to us. And clearly, when you look at what we have produced for the first half of the year, we targeted to do about 22.7 billion, and we have done 22.5 billion. So clearly, we are on track, and we are living within the proceeds that Parliament has given to us for financing of the 2021 budget. So if you want to talk about that, talk about whether we are living within or we are living outside what has been approved for us. That is very important, and Ghanaians should know that. Mr. Speaker, again, my colleague on the other side also mentioned the fact that the public sector wage increase is 4%. Mr. Speaker, in coming out with the public sector wage, we don't just look at government, because government is not the only employer. There are other employers that we should also consider when we are fixing the public sector wage, because government employs, the private sector also employs. When you look at what is happening currently and the economy now recovering, you cannot push a rate that will make the public sector, will make it difficult for the public sector to employ more people. It is very, very easy for the public sector to lay people off when cost of doing business, cost of production goes up. So government considered all these things, and together with employers and the union, arrived at 4% for 2021 and then 6% for 2022. We believe that
Just a minute. Honorable Deputy Whit, you realize that I'm very reluctant.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you are right. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Minister for Finance, I'm following her very well. But the Honorable Ranking Member quoted from page 91 and read before us that the District Assembly Common Fund, they are supposed to pay them 2.4 billion. And for quarter 1, quarter 2, they are supposed to pay them 1 billion and 69. And they have paid only, according to the report, the document here, they have paid only 450 million for either quarter 1 plus quarter 2. So by implication, if you subtract 450 million from 1 billion and 68, they are in arrears of over 600 million. That is what he said. But for quarter 4 of 2020, that has not been paid. That is in arrest. So this is what he said. But she says she's correcting the ranking member and commenting. Meanwhile, she has not quoted from any aspect of the document. But in the submission of the honorable ranking member, she carried us along. So we are following. And he quoted from the document, and it is here. What is the honorable Deputy Minister for Finance correcting? Have you paid fourth quarter 2020 this Assembly Common Fund? If yes, then it means what is here is also not correct. But he cannot be blamed for quoting from your own document. Atu didn't bring this, you brought it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that my colleague on the other side did not hear me. I mentioned that he was comparing apples to oranges, and that when you get to the road fund, he compared the total collections. He compared the total collections to the provision, and for the other ones, he compared what has been programmed to budgeted. So that is what I'm saying, that he compared oranges to apples. Mr. Speaker, let me move on. What I'm saying is that...
Just a minute. Just take your time. Take your time. I'm taking note of the time. I'll give you enough time. The member is available. On order 92(1)B is applicable. But that depends whether the Deputy Minister will give in. Because you're trying to elucidate some matter raised by the member speaking in the course of his speech. And they say, provided that the member speaking is willing to give way and resume his seat, and that the member wishing to interrupt is called by Mr. Speaker. So that is where we are. That's the only standing order that is available. And so I wanted to know from her, because there's some disagreement. The Honorable Acho Forson made some statements which you are referring to. And the issue being raised is that you are not properly quoting what the honorable member said in your submissions. But you said you are doing it. And so I want to give him the opportunity. Is she really referring to exactly what you said?
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Deputy Minister responsible for finance is misquoting me. Speaker, in the statement that I made, my argument was simple. I said the government is cutting expenditure at the wrong places and then increasing expenditure again at the wrong places, and went on to say that he's doing the wrong thing. So, Speaker, by quoting that, an example, the District Assembly Common Fund in page 91, Appendix 2C of the Media Review Budget Statement said, the government themselves has programmed to spend an amount of $1,069 million. $1,069 million. Yet, Mr. Speaker, in the same budget statement, even though they have programmed to spend $1,069 million, they have so far paid to the District Assembly Common Fund a paltry amount of 415 million Ghana cedis. So they are cutting expenditure at the wrong places. So, Speaker, I did not end there. I added other statutory funds and proved to them that they are cutting expenditure at the wrong places. So, Speaker, I also compared how much the government is collecting in the name of taxes for GET fund, for road fund, yet they are not paying to the statutory authorities. That was my argument. So if he's quoting me, he should quote me holistically. He should not mislead the House based on what I said. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr.
Go
Speaker,
on, yes.
I was specific about the road fund levy. And in the road fund levy, he compared collections to actual payments. I mean, we have a record of it, so you can check. I was listening to him very well. He compared collections of road fund to actual payment. But what I'm saying is that we programmed to pay a little over 500 billion for the 6 months for the road fund. So when you are comparing, compare the programmed amount of 583 million to what we have paid of 435 million. That's all I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, it is clear. It's on page 90 and page 91. It is right there. And that was what he did. So that is what I'm saying, that compare oranges to oranges or apples to apples and not apples to oranges, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and again, my colleague on the other side keeps saying that we keep charging things to DACF. But the PFM law allows government to, for any reason, to also align its macro-fiscal targets to any of the statutory funds. So government sort thinking that the school feeding program is all over in the districts. Government sought to align an amount to the district's assembly common fund. And Mr. Speaker, what was aligned is not the 489 million my colleague on the other side mentioned. Rather, it is 245 million Ghana cedis that was aligned. So that is very clear. That was what was approved in the DACF formula. And so that should be stated clearly, that 245 million was approved in the DACF formula and not the 489. Honorable Kodo, please sit down. But Mr.
You
Speaker,
go on. You all go on. You don't have any power to tell him to sit down.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side also keep on talking about the revenues we have generated. And Mr. Speaker, from all indications, my brother on the other side mentioned that we program to do 35 billion raise 35 billion of revenues, and then we have been able to raise 10 billion short of that. But clearly, the document we have in front of us tells us that we programmed to do 32 billion, and we have done 28.3 billion. So that shortfall is 12.5. But the most interesting thing about this is that usually when we are not able to meet our revenues, we come here with an expenditure over and above our deficit. But this time, we are clearly within the target expenditure we set for ourselves, such that clearly it tells you that government is doing everything possible to live within its means and to make sure that we sustain whatever it is that we want to sustain and implement our programs and projects for the 2021 budget. And in doing so, Mr. Speaker, government is really focused on revenue mobilization. And to that, we heard the minister mention that there's going to be a revenue assurance and compliance execution called the RACE to help us mobilize more revenue. And also there are other digitization measures that have been put in place, like the Ghana.gov, which is a common payment platform for all government services. We piloted it some part of last year and the first 4 or 5 months of this year, and we have seen some major improvements, and clearly this has reflected in the revenues that we have generated. All we are asking is for Parliament and Ghanaians to support us, and once we are able to raise more revenue, I believe that all that we have set for ourselves to implement, we will be able to implement.
Honorable Deputy
and we'll do
Minister,
it and
in
do
conclusion.
it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We now move to the turn of Honorable Ricketts Hagen Kweku. Sorry? Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, just before we started, I think we gave ourselves indication that today being Friday, we allow for 4 people from either side to contribute, and then we'll bring the curtain down. And then Monday, we could begin with those on the list. Monday will be the winding up, but we'll precede the winding up with 2 or 3 members before the leaders do the winding up.
Thank you for the information. What I have here is 6 members from this side and 5 from this side. I didn't get this additional information you've just stated. We've finished with the 4 from each side of the House. And say from your understanding, then it's time for us to move on to another issue. What is the guidance of leadership? Do we adjourn or?
Speaker, I believe we can take an adjournment.
It's time for adjournment.
We adjourn and then come on Monday.
Now, I didn't know the time you started. Are you in my hands or I'm in your hands?
Mr. Speaker, we started at 11 a.m., so the leader has to move the adjournment motion. We've not done 4 hours. 11 a.m., so leader has to move the motion for adjournment.
Honorable members, from the information, I think that I'm in your hands. But before I give the opportunity to move the motion for adjournment, my attention has been drawn to an earlier message from His Excellency the President, which was not delivered yesterday or the day before yesterday. So I'll just deliver it to the House. It was submitted on the 26th of July, and it says, Mr. Speaker, absence from Ghana. In accordance with Article 59 of the Constitution, I write to inform you that I'll be traveling outside the country in the morning of Tuesday, 27 July 2021 to London, UK, at the invitation of His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, and Right Honorable Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the Government of the United Kingdom, to lead Ghana's delegation to the Global Education Summit to be held from 28 to 29 July 2021 in London. I will also, at the invitation of the founder, the Chief Executive Officer of the Emerging Business Intelligence and Innovation Group, attend as special guest of honor and deliver a keynote address at the 2021 African Investment Risk and Compliance Summit on 30th July 2021 at the University of Oxford. I will return to Ghana in the evening of Sunday, 1st August 2021. During my absence, the Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, shall, in accordance with Article 68 of the Constitution, act in my stead. Accept, Mr. Speaker, the assurances of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely and best wishes, Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo. Yes, honorable members, we will now await your action.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House will take adjournment until Monday, the 2nd of August at 10 o'clock in the phone. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Motion moved for adjournment. Any seconder?
Speaker, I beg to second the motion for adjournment, trusting that on Monday we'll defer questions and focus, concentrate, and conclude on the budget debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, before I put the question, I would like to have that discussion with the leadership for us to agree on what we'll do at the end of the day, looking at the law and the practice. With this, I put the question. Those in favor of adjournment to Monday at 10 a.m. in the forenoon, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. The motion has been carried. and the House is accordingly adjourned to Monday, 2nd August 2021 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. The House is adjourned.